It's very...
Are you tired of fighting the same old dragons over and over again? Wouldn't you rather fight a new family of dragons? Or better yet, wouldn't you rather play as a new dragon species in your 5e or Pathfinder game? Well, now you can. Roll for Combat, the creators of the incredibly popular Battlezoo Ancestries Dragons, have done it again with Battlezoo Secret Dragons. This collection of 4 dragon books introduces new families of dragons to the world of 5e and Pathfinder. Now you can play as, or fight, the dragon you never knew you needed. Inside each book, players will find complete rules for playing as one of these new unique dragons, allowing them to unleash new abilities and powers never seen before. Meanwhile, GMs will find pages of monster stats, allowing you to pit these new creatures against your players. Each book features one new family of dragons filled with extensive, in-depth descriptions of their powers and abilities, background and history information, world lore, illustrations, and more to help you introduce these new dragons into your 5e or Pathfinder games. Experience the world of Battlezoo Secret Dragons through 4 new books. Fairy dragons are connected with the Fey realm and love to play pranks and cause mischief. That is, when they aren't conspiring with the courts of the Fey. Misfit dragons are hot, magical messes of magical energy, constantly shifting their physical forms, phasing in and out of existence, or simply releasing random wild magic effects. They're quite a handful. Leshy dragons are deeply connected to nature, allowing them to grow alongside different types of plants, fungi, and leshies. Oh yeah, and they're master chefs as well. And finally, the powerful battle dragons are obsessed with the thrill of combat. Battle dragons love hunting foes, dueling opponents, or commanding their legions to glorious victory. Head over to kickstarter.rollforcombat.com now to secure your copies of Battlezoo Secret Dragons and become the dragon you were always meant to be.
Oh, now I can go. Okay, Steven said 3, 2, 1, and it wasn't. So hello and welcome, everyone. I'm really excited because the Commander and Guardian class playtest just came out, and it's time to take a look at them together with all of you. I know some of you may have already read it. That's great, because I'm going to read it now, and therefore, if there's something later on that provides additional context to something I'm reading, and you want to tell me in chat, hey, wait, take a look at this feat on page whatever, let me know. I'm going to go through in order as it's presented, because that might also help with presentation of the classes. If something makes something clear, but it's only in a later part of the class, maybe that will help figure out like the order that things are presented. So page whatever is the best page. It's always the best page. Actually, page XXX is the best, because that just means you forgot to fill in the number. Yeah. That's right. Steven, you're muted. All right, well, we will unmute Steven. He was saying that he hasn't read over the classes. He was saying that...
God damn it, this keeps updating. And every time it updates, there's something wrong with my computer. It updates and it always changes my microphone. Anyhow, hopefully that's the last
It's weird because also I can hear him, so his microphone is still chosen correctly for our chat in Zoom, but it just isn't for OBS.
It keeps doing it. I gotta set a little reminder here, because every time I start OBS.
All right, so Steven, you were saying you hadn't read the playtest either.
No, I did not read it, but I was watching Derek on Knights of Last Call, and I do know 4E very well. And the
4E Warlord is obviously going to be close to the Commander. I can tell that without having read the Commander.
He was saying there's a lot of 4E. So I'll be honest. I'm going to be here kind of more peanut gallery than Mark going through his detailed overview, because he also read it over. But
I mean, I'm going to read it mostly for the first time with you all here.
Oh, okay.
I definitely skimmed some of other people's reactions before this. I've been paying attention to it, but I haven't done a deep dive yet. So this is time for us to do it together.
I'm going to say one thing off the top of my head. So
okay,
I am a big proponent of, how do I say it? If you're going to be a melee class, you need to also have ranged options. It's almost like you're either ranged focus and melee second, or melee second and range second. And
so you're a big switch hitter fan.
Well, yes, I am, because it's very hard to play a class that's only good at one thing. I mean, that actually was one of the big issues with Monk. Like, we're playing, like right now, the game I'm playing, the two big hitters are a Monk and a Thief, and these guys literally have no options for ranged. And so when something flies, they actually do. You know what they do?
Do they have an extending rune to extend their hand?
Nope.
Did they use Earth Bind to bind the flying creatures to the ground to beat it up?
Nope.
Did they cry in a corner?
Nope. They took their like legendary in jumping and athletics.
Oh,
and
okay, sudden leap.
That's right. They literally say, "Oh, you're flying up there? Give me a second," and then they literally run up and grab them and then pummel them while they're like. That's how they do it. Like that's their ranged mobility. The ranged mobility
sounds fun.
Oh, I allow it. I don't know if it's rules accurate, but I don't care. It's fun. And,
I mean, there's feats to do that. There's like cloud jumping where you just walk on the air.
They have
and jump around on
They have all that. So
yeah.
I'm going to be very interested to see how they handle the ranged aspects, or how they make them viable and different than, you know, say monks and rogues. And
well, let's take a look. Yeah. I think they're going to be pretty different. The one to look for the similarities will compare Guardian and Champion. Commander is just going to be different than anything we have, because it's going to make other allies do actions. Maybe Martial Archetype will be the most similar.
All right. Well, here I got the thing open.
Perfect.
I'm on the very first page.
Let's take a look, everybody. Let's look at the first page. I'm not going to just read everything off necessarily. I'm going to do so for some of the rules so that we can look at what's there in this. But we should take a look at the Battlecry class playtest. It's to see what the design team is saying the classes are, and to look for other details like we always do when we're doing these deep dives. So the commander is said to be a battlefield leader whose clever use of tactics can turn the tide of any fight, deploying abilities called tactics to grant allies extra movement or bonus actions if they follow certain orders. Guardian is a defensive combatant who focuses on squeezing every last drop of protection from their armor for themselves and their allies. The Guardian can intercept strikes meant for other characters and taunt foes to draw their attention. Okay. So the how to play does is pretty similar to always. I'm not going to go too deep into it. If we look at who signed this, we can see that not only do we have all the people who signed the last time we analyzed like the signatures and the list of credits, we also have Jason Keeley, senior designer. Now, I'm pretty sure his credits were on some other Paizo releases before that as a Paizo designer, but this is the first time that he has signed one of these playtests, as now he was previously the development manager for the Starfinder team. Then he left Paizo to go work at another role-playing game company for a while, and it looks like he's back at Paizo as a senior designer with the Rules and Lore team. So yes, that's really cool.
And you know something else? I think Jason Keeley did something else for somebody.
That's true. I mean, he worked on the Misfit Dragons for our Dragon Kickstarter that you may have seen at the beginning of the stream.
That's right. So if you want to get some Dragon books, go to kickstarter.rollforcombat.com and you can pick up new Dragon books. And one of them is the Misfit Dragon. And I literally said to Mark, because I know Jason's writing, and Jason, he writes really goofy, crazy stuff. So I love his writing. And I'm like, okay, we got to get Jason Keeley from Misfits, because he's going to do a good job. And we did. I was very happy we got Jason. So Jason has written the Misfit Dragons, and now we're going to see how he does with Commander and Guardian.
Yeah, well, we don't know. It didn't say like which designers were like the leads on the two classes, but usually all the designers do a pass on all of them. So let's take a look at Commander. Let's see. It's an 8 hit point class with intelligence as the key attribute. Expert in everything except fortitude. Perception, reflex, and will are all expert. Fortitude is trained. It's got society and warfare lore plus 2 more plus int modifier. So it gets an extra lore because of warfare lore. Simple and martial weapons, unarmed attacks, all armors, that includes heavy and unarmored defense, plus commander class DC. And then let's take a look at this page just to see what the flavor is on it, to make sure the rules are matching the flavor. So this is one of the cases I will read through the whole thing because we want to really internalize this concept. You approach battle with the knowledge that tactics and strategy are every bit as crucial as brute strength or numbers. You may have trained in classical theories of warfare and strategy at a military school, or you might have refined your techniques through hard-won experience as part of an army or mercenary company. Regardless of how you came by your knowledge, you have a gift for signaling your allies from across the battlefield, shouting commands to rout even the most desperate conflicts, allowing your squad to exceed their limits and claim victory. During combat encounters, you look for an advantageous position to survey the battlefield, shouting out instructions to your allies or signaling them with your personal banner based on the tactics you've trained and drilled beforehand. During social encounters, you leverage your keen intellect and knowledge of warfare to watch for hostile political ploys and ferret out information your rivals would rather keep hiding. While exploring, you use your keen perception trained across multiple battlefields to watch for ambushes and plan tactics that are useful for your current environment. In downtime, you make connections with soldiers and aristocrats alike, leveraging your connections to find promising prospects for work. You might enjoy board games like chess, draught, Go, Imperial Conquest, or other games of tactics as ways to keep yourself sharp in times of peace. You might hold yourself to an incredibly high standard of personal responsibility, chastising yourself for small mistakes that others don't even notice. Take the lead in discussions or negotiations instinctively, trusting your keen mind to prevail where your personality might not. Constantly strive to learn more about your allies so you can bring out the best in them. Others probably respect your knowledge and opinion, especially when taking the broad view of a situation. Sometimes consider you to be too bossy or demanding. Underestimate your cunning, especially if they're a scholar or other academic unfamiliar with the rigorous study required to obtain your tactical knowledge. So that is the class that's being described here. Let's take a look at what their class features are going to be. So there's the class features everybody has: ancestry and background, attribute boosts, initial proficiency. We've got a banner. Seems like kind of similar to a Cavalier's banner, but we're going to start with a custom banner. It's affixed to a weapon or shield that you're wielding or held in a hand attached to a pole. Obviously, you would probably put it on your main weapon or shield that you're always going to hold unless someone like steals it from you. Does mean that it's harder to be a switch hitter like Stephen likes. If you are a commander, you definitely need to hold on to that main weapon that has the banner. As long as it's visible, you and your allies in a 30-foot emanation gain a +1 status bonus to will saves and DCs against fear effects. You pause or resume this effect as part of any action you would typically use to stow or retrieve your banner. If it's destroyed or stolen, allies within 30 feet become frightened 1. All right. And some abilities can let you place the banner and then originate effects from where you placed it. I guess a switch hitter would probably want to do that. We'll see as we move along. Tactics are something that you have a folio with 4 of. It looks like as you increase in level, you gain more of them, and you can get more powerful ones. It looks like each day we can prepare 2 of our 4, and we can also spend 10 minutes to replace those 2. That sounds pretty good. You have 4 choices. You can pick 2 of them. Now, here's something that I think is a little odd. When you drill, you can instruct a total number of allies equal to 2 plus your intelligence modifier to respond to your tactics in combat. That is a very weird number of allies to be able to instruct. There obviously should be a limit, just in case you somehow manage to get like 30 things on the field, and there are going to be effects that probably say all of the chosen allies attack. But like, this isn't a limit that's 6 or maybe 5 if you didn't maximize your intelligence to start, and then goes up to like 7, 8, or 9 at the end of the game. That's a huge amount. If they're going to play around with a limit, it might make, and it's also variable on intelligence, like in an amount that doesn't usually matter. Like if you're not trying to cheese it and put 9 things on the battlefield, 6 is going to already be all of the ones that you need to have selected. So the way that it scales up is a little unusual. I would have thought that maybe they would have wanted to go with like a static number for this, or even leaned in on the fact that there was a limitation to it to make the effects more powerful because it was limited to a smaller number or something like that. But 2 plus int mod is like just in that sweet spot of being so high that they could have just done 6, the starting amount for 18 int, or sorry, plus 4 int. and they it probably doesn't need to go up to 7, 8, or 9 for most groups. And groups that do need it probably need it right away if you're a very large group. So there could be like a feat or something like that to give you more instead of auto scaling based on int. But we'll see later on. I'm saying this based just on looking at it right here. So gaining new tactics. You add additional tactics and increase the number of tactics at expert, master, and legendary tactician class features. Because they use shorthand and signals unique to each commander, there's typically no benefit to stealing or using somebody else's folio. Sure, so it's not like a spell book. If we look at the key terms here, tactics are abilities that you signal your allies to do. They have to be able to perceive you, or when you signal them by waving your banner or shouting out to them. You can use multiple tactics, but another character can't respond to more than one tactic, regardless of the source. Okay, so that stops you from having a party with multiple of these characters that just cause massive numbers of attacks to happen. Now, it's likely that they're going to use reactions, which is why they thought of this and put in drilled reactions. Your time spent training with your allies allows them to respond quickly to your commands. Once per round, when you use a tactic, grant one ally of your choice benefiting from that tactic an extra reaction to use that tactic. So this is important because you may have an ally with a reaction that's crucial to their class who otherwise is going to be like, no, I'm not going to use your tactics because I need to use my reaction from my class. And then suddenly your entire commander class is less synergistic with that party. And obviously, the fact that it generates additional reactions could have gotten out of control if tactics could have multiple commanders shouting them out. And so since someone is limited to responding to one tactic per round, even if the multiple commanders wanted to give tons of reactions to the same person, they can't. So that already has covered that. Looks like the banner trait indicates an effect that requires waving or displaying the banner. You must be holding it in one hand or wielding a weapon it is attached to for the banner trait. Let me look back up at the thing that says about placing the banner. It says as long as it's placed, your abilities originate from there. Interesting. It doesn't say that if you place the banner, you can use the ones that require you to wave it. So we'll have to look later on to see if you can or you can't. Flourish is just a thing that's on a lot of classes that are martial where you can't use multiple flourishes in the same round. They're usually action compression. And then squad mates are the ones who you designated at the beginning of the day.
By the way, it says you can put the banner on your backpack, which is exactly what I would do. Just have that like.
Wait, oh, did it? I missed that. I was reading through it quickly.
Yeah,
it said you could fix it to your weapon or shield.
Or worn attached to a pole alongside your backpack.
Where's the backpack?
On your commander's bag, yeah.
Yeah, no, I do see it here.
So you can
wear it in the second paragraph. The first paragraph that stated things you could do.
Aren't you glad I'm here?
Yeah, the first paragraph stated the things that you could do, but why the heck would you ever hold it in one hand?
Well, exactly. If
you could have it on a pole attached to your backpack, maybe because if you're using the banner actions, you actually can't use them.
Maybe, but like because Roman Legion...
yeah. Actually, that's correct. Because it says to use an ability that has the banner trait, you must be holding it or wielding it on a weapon. So if you do the backpack, you can't do the banner actions.
But think about like the Roman Legion, because they would hold the banners. Those would be the bannerman. And then you have like the Japanese warrior samurais who keep it on their back. So
yeah, it looks like people in chat, like Brian Strom, found out the same thing I did. If it's on your back, it's not going to let you do any of your banner actions, which is fine. You can just be like, I don't need the banner actions. I'm not going to take the banner actions.
But also, it's good to
save my hand.
It works both ways because it's probably just one action just to stow it and then pull it back. So.
Oh, sure. But I don't want to spend any actions if I can help it. Yeah, I'm probably going to put it on my weapon, but I'm not as much of a switch hitter as Steven. So,
well, it depends.
Switch hitting is really cool for some classes, but with the commander, I don't need to be a switch hitter because I can probably usually making everybody else fight instead of myself.
True, but you always well again, it's always fun until like our guys are level 16. Once you get up to those flying levels, you need to have something for flying.
Oh, sure. I probably would be an archer commander. I mean, I'll look to see what other feats are down there. And then just tell everybody else to do stuff and hotshot one bow attack because I'm expecting actions to give my allies actions, which won't leave me with many actions to move.
Right.
So I will need to read the class to see if I'm right or wrong. We can all see what my predictions lead to. But my prediction is I won't have a lot of actions to move myself, and so that I would want to have ranged as my main form of attacking. Let's see. So we get shield block, and we're going to get some feats, skill feats, general feats, skill increases. So we get warfare expertise at 3rd level, where we get expert in warfare lore and can recall knowledge about most creatures regardless of types to determine whether they can be reasoned with and their offensive abilities, and whether their saving throws are weak. As long as we're observing at least one opponent when initiative is rolled, we can use warfare lore for initiative. So we have to be observing them in advance to get warfare tactics, but that will usually be true unless everything is hiding, I think. Ancestry feats, everybody gets that. Military expertise at 5th level is going to give us expert weapons, and it's going to give us a critical specialization effect. Then at 7th level, our proficiency rank for commander class DC increases to expert. That's pretty fast for a class DC. I don't think any martial class gets it that soon, except for commander. We add 1 new tactic, which could be an expert tactic. We'll have to take a look at that. And we can prepare 3 tactics, plus warfare lore goes to master. And we get weapon specialization like all martial classes. Expert in fortitude at level 9. Expert in armor at level 11. And gain armor specialization effects at that point. We gain commanding will at 11th level, which is master, similar to resolve type situation. We gain master perception at 13th level. We're going to gain weapon mastery at 13th level, like most martial characters do. At 15th level, we gain master reflex saves, and it's kind of like an evasion type situation. Greater weapon specialization at 15th level, like most martial, pretty much all martial classes are going to do. Master tactician also at 15th level gives, once again, faster than other martial classes. This is a caster rate. Commander class DC increases to master. We're going to get another tactic for our folio that can be master tactic, and we can have 4 per day. And Loremonger says bow staff, BOW, as a commander main weapon, because bow staff is a sort of one of those weapons that can. I'm missing the word now, even though I worked on developing this section. The hybrid weapons, the ones that can switch between 2 forms. That would be a good option. That is a very good switch hitting option for when you only have a banner attached to one thing. Especially since the bow staff doesn't really pay much of a price at all, at being, if I recall correctly, it being a bow, to be a kind of haphazard staff sometimes as well, just in case you need it. All right, so 17th level, we get Master in Armor. At 19th level, we get Legendary class DC. No martial class has done so. Now, Kineticist has. That means Tacticians, kind of more appropriately than Kineticists, will probably be good at snares, unless snares change a lot. We will get a 5th tactic at a time. We get legendary tactics, and we get 1 more tactic. So that all makes sense. Let's take a look at these tactics. They're not feats. They're not regular features. We're going to be able to take them and add them in along with what we have. So let's take a look at these 1st level tactics that we can get 4 of and prepare 2 each day. I'm going to be paying a lot of attention to the fact that we have up to 6 people that can use these tactics. This is very interesting because the design team will have a chance here to do something where they say, hey, look, you have 6 people, but maybe some of these actions only allow some number of those 6 people to do something. They don't have to all allow all of those 6 characters to act. If they do, I'm going to be talking about that a little bit. So let's see what's going to go on here. So mobility tactics, defensive retreat. For 2 actions, this one requires the banner in hand. You call for a careful retreat. You step up to... each of the squad mates who hear you step up to 3 times as a free action. Speaking of which, are you your own squad mate? I think no. It says only you and your squad mates can benefit from your tactics. But then, so squad mates are not you. So your tactics will have to name you if they will include you. So all squad mates who hear you can step up to 3 times as a free action. It does cost you 2 actions, but it's free. Each step must take them farther away from at least one hostile creature they're observing, can only take them closer to a hostile creature if doing so is the only way for them to move towards safety if they're surrounded. Okay, So that is a fun one that can allow for safe retreats, but and it's completely free, no reaction, but it's balanced because of the fact that it requires you to spend 2 actions, which is quite a lot of actions. And you, at first, it's one of your only 2 tactics, which you might not need all the time. 1 action, form up. Signal all squad mates affected by your banner. Each can immediately stride as a reaction. They must end their movement inside your banner's aura. So they have to be close enough to get into your banner's aura or in your banner's aura already. So that's 1 action to get a lot of stride. It does cost reactions, but often that could be worth it. Mountaineering training, 1 action. All squad mates gain climb speed of 20 feet until the end of your next turn. And so do you. If you have it prepared, you can use warfare lore instead of athletics to climb. So that could be very powerful if you use it to climb and kite someone at low levels. On the other hand, it certainly takes a lot of actions for you to keep this up.
Let me ask you a question, Mark. So one thing Derek was pointing out, and one thing I read when I was going through this, it seems like they're going away from the simulationist aspect of Pathfinder and literally just going full into fantasy superhero aspect, because
is Pathfinder really that simulationist?
Well, it started off a little bit. Well, 3.5 was.
It? Well, you can scare someone to death with intimidating skill feat.
You know what?
You can jump like your characters did, like 100 feet in the air or something like that. Like, is it really simulationist with martial abilities? It's not.
Well, let me rephrase that. Or at least
that. I didn't. When I was working to design it, listen, there were some people who wanted it to be, who were like, this is an issue. A few playtesters, even a couple people at Paizo who were like, I don't know if you should be able to jump 120 feet. Even an Olympic athlete can't do that. But that is not what won out in Pathfinder 2e. That's not what the final game became, right? Like, it's a game where martial characters can exceed the limits
look, I get it, but some things are a little easier because it's like, okay, I can get it. Kung Fu movies, jumping around, wire fu, sure. But like, mountaineering training and then like using your martial ability to...
Derek just said in chat he's trying to back up his own point that you are secondhand giving by saying the main thing is you're still jumping with athletics with those other things because you're otherworldly athletics. You're not using warfare lore. So that is a very good point, Derek.
But it says if you have the tactic prepared, you can use warfare.
Derek is saying the other ones that were already in the game were like that. And he's saying what's different is now you're going to use warfare lore. That is a very good point, Derek. But I will cede you that is different. But I will also say, if someone has good enough warfare lore to the extent of some of these athletics of the athletic characters, wouldn't they be able to like create weird ropes and harnesses and like use some combination of tactics that is sort of subsumed into this in order to use their warfare lore to find a way to climb it more easily, even if they aren't physically like the most athletic of athletes? Like using ingenuity, I think that's not that unreasonable. The main thing here is just that there could be some weird kiting things you can do at very early levels with that one. Whereas naval training does not have the same thought about it. That is the same thing, but with a swim speed. And in that case, that's just like, can we play in the water and not get wrecked? So getting a swim speed is when compared to a climb speed is always one that's just like, yeah, this is good that you would be able to have this in a naval campaign or one where not everyone has a swim speed to be able to like engage with the water rules without having issues. Whereas climb is one that can sometimes cause weird kiting situations. It probably won't do it that often. It does cost a lot of actions to keep it up unless they have an ability later to keep it active without continuing to spend an action every round. So Passage of Lions is 1 action. Signal all squad mates affected by your banner. Each can swap positions with another willing ally adjacent to them as a free action that does not trigger reactions, and this only takes you 1 action. An ally can't swap into a space it can't fit into. If one of the allies occupies more squares than the other, the smaller ally can move into any part of the larger ally's space as long as the 2 remain adjacent. Okay, so this one is pretty cool. it doesn't cost you a lot of actions, but it also doesn't move your allies that much. However, small amounts of movement can make a huge difference for your group, especially if the enemy is trying to circle around and come after vulnerable people on your team, and then suddenly they're facing your front line. Or your Guardian, which we'll get into later when we get to that class. So that's kind of cool. Offensive tactics. I'm assuming this is what most people are going to want because everybody loves offense. Coordinating maneuvers, one action. Signal one squad mate affected by your commander's banner. That ally can immediately step as a free action. If they end next to an opponent, they can attempt to reposition that target as a reaction. So that's cool. So for one action, one person gets a step, and then they get a reposition. Since it's taken as a reaction, it doesn't have any kind of multiple attack penalty by default. So that's pretty cool, and it's an example of what I said, where they have the toggle to not give everybody this. Because obviously, for one action, if your entire team did repositions, that could be pretty funny. Speaking of which, two action double team. Signal one squad mate affected by commander's banner as an opponent within their reach. They can shove or reposition an opponent as a free action. If their maneuver is successful and the target ends their movement adjacent to you or a different squad mate, you or the second squad mate can attempt a melee strike against that target as a reaction. So one thing that's good about this is that it gives me the ability to use my reaction, which normally it looks like a lot of these things so far didn't. It does cost two actions, so I won't be able to use it with the other two action ones. But that can be very funny, especially if I shove a creature out of reach of any of my allies, but into a spot where I can attack with a reach weapon. That will really, really annoy them. Let's check out End It. For two actions, you and your allies currently outnumber enemies on the battlefield, and you or a squad mate have reduced an enemy to 0 hit points since the start of your last turn. At your proclamation that victory is already at hand, your allies march forward with an authoritative stomp, scattering your enemies in terror. Signal all squad mates affected by your commander's banner. You and each ally can step directly toward a hostile creature they're observing as a free action. Any hostile creatures within 10 feet of you or a squad mate after this movement must attempt a will save against your class DC. On a failure, they become fleeing for 1 round. On a critical failure, they become fleeing for 1 round and are frightened 2. Note that this is incapacitation. That makes sense because it would make absolutely no sense for you to be like, I am facing, our group of 4 is facing off against this giant mega dragon, and also it's 2 really crappy things that are 8 levels lower, and you're like, aha, I've killed this crappy thing, and the mega dragon's like, oh no, I will retreat because I'm outnumbered, even though I'm already as strong as your party. So as expected, it's got incapacitation in there. So this is, you outnumber weaker foes, or maybe equal foes. Now they really are in trouble. Maybe they should run away, and that is the tactic that you can do there. It's essentially a 2-action at-will powerful crowd control that you can do only after defeating someone, so not at the start of the fight, that also comes with movement as like an incidental benefit. That's pretty cool. I like it. I wouldn't want that to be my only tactic, which is why it's good that I get 2, since that I can only use that in certain situations. I need a bread and butter, though. Let's find a bread and butter. Pincer attack. Signal all squad mates affected by your commander's banner. Each can step as a free action. If any of your opponents end this movement, allies end adjacent to an opponent, that opponent is off guard to melee attacks from you and all squad mates until the start of your next turn. Okay, that's cool. That is a free step for a completely free step for everybody, which is already great for one action. And they're going to become off guard, which you know is normally easy to do, but it's a free step.
By the way, any questions?
Yeah, talk about it in chat.
Talk about it in chat.
Neutromancer says we usually can't see what you're reading at the top or bottom of the page. That's because Steven is scrolling it, so I'm just reading on my own separate copy of it.
I can zoom out, but the problem is if you zoom out, like, tell me if it's too small. Like,
yeah, let Steven know. All right, let's see. Reload.
See, I can do it
Signal
this side,
all squad mates. Each immediately can interact to reload. A siege weapon crew can command your squad mates to load a siege weapon instead. Okay, so that's certainly interesting. And it probably, I would have to look at the siege weapon rules to see how ridiculous you can get with siege weapons, if you could get like multiple reloads on a siege weapon suddenly. The main thing here is if you have a lot of allies who use reloading ranged weapons, then instead of them being like shoot, reload, shoot if they don't move, then next word reload, shoot, reload, they can do shoot, reload, shoot every turn. And if you can do shoot, reload, shoot every turn, that is very good for reload classes because reload, shoot, reload turns are very weak. But on the other hand, shoot, reload, shoot turns, especially if they're special reload like a gunslinger's reload, are pretty good because you wouldn't have needed a third attack most of the time. So this is pretty handy if you have a lot of characters like that, although that would be a pretty unusual party. Also, it didn't give them a free shot yet, so it hasn't done anything too outrageous. Shields up, one action. All squad mates affected by your commander's banner immediately raise the shield as a reaction. If they have a parry weapon, they can parry as a free action. Okay, so right away, the fact that they can parry as a free action seems incredibly strong if it's combined with one of several abilities to make parry weapons give the +2, because then for one action, your entire team gets their +2. It's not that big of a deal if they only are getting the +1, but this could be good. It does take their reaction to just raise the shield, which honestly is a first world problem of the class, because normally everybody would be like, oh my gosh, we all get shields up for just one person spending one action. But because that's other people's reactions are a major part of your economy and your tactics are, it's one that I wouldn't necessarily want to use all the time. Also, I guess, yeah, we went into, did we go into defensive actions? No, we're on offensive tactics. Why is that an offensive tactic? That doesn't seem like an offensive tactic to me, personally. I guess it's because the options were mobility and offensive, and there wasn't a third thing. And then strike hard. 2 actions, 1 squad mate immediately strikes as a reaction. Okay, that seems pretty reasonable. That's like a Marshall type thing. All right. The fact that exists, which seems pretty reasonable, leads me to believe that maybe the one that was previewed in advance on social media is an outlier, because that's one that I want to talk about when we get to it. There's one that's going to come up where everybody attacks. So let's go to expert tactics first. So remember, everyone, you have to be level 7 to even get these. So this is essentially when the spellcasters are getting 4th level spells. So let's see what we're going to do here. Piranha Assault, 1 action. Designate a creature within 60 feet. Signal all squad mates affected by your commander's banner. Each time you or your squad mates attack that creature and deal damage to it of a type the creature resists, they ignore amount of that resistance equal to your level until the beginning of your next turn. Okay, so that is a lot of resistance that you can ignore for your whole team for 1 action. That's very, very good. Obviously, it takes one of your slots, and not everything has resistance, and it takes your expert slot. Let's see what the alternative is. Stupefying Rate. 2 actions, signal up to 2 squad mates affected by your commander's banner. These allies can stride up to their speed as a reaction. Each enemy they're adjacent to at any point during the movement must roll a will save or become stupefied 1 for a round or stupefied 2 on a critical failure. So this is pretty cool. I like that. Again, it has a bespoke number. It's 2 squad mates. And it's really good against spellcasters because you can get up in their face and stupefy them. But it's not one you would want to use every single time. But it's obviously going to be strong when you can use it against the appropriate spellcasters plus the additional strides. But I don't think that it like knocks off all the other ones as a possibility. I am always a little paranoid about the worst case scenario, like a heavy resistance. So I would probably go Piranha Assault between these two, because I'm always trying to be like, in the worst case, I want to make sure that I'm covered for that. Let's take a look at Master Tactics, which is a much higher level ability than the last one. We're only going to be able to grab that at 15th level. So keep that in mind, everyone. This is near the end of the game. Demoralizing Charge, 2 actions. Signal up to 2 squad mates again, just like the last one we looked at. Affected by your commander's banner. They can immediately stride toward an enemy they're observing as a free action. Okay. If they end this movement adjacent to an enemy, they can attempt to strike that enemy as a reaction. For each of these strikes that are successful, the target enemy must succeed at a will save or become frightened 1, frightened 2 on a critical failure. If both strikes target the same enemy, that enemy takes a -1 circumstance penalty to their will save to resist this effect. I'm assuming it's if they both target the same enemy and hit, maybe? Not sure. And it looks like, yeah, so it looks like you definitely want to target the same one, because not only can you make them save both times, but also they'll take a penalty. It's possible that it's possible they don't even both have to hit. Based on the wording that's here, they don't both have to hit. They just both have to target the same enemy. Anyway, that's pretty cool. But the other one is possibly outright bonkers. So let's take a look at it. Ready, aim, fire. Signal all squad mates affected by your commander's banner. They can interact to swap to a ranged weapon as a free action, interact to reload as a free action, attempt a ranged strike against an enemy that both you and they are observing as a reaction, and if they have a cantrip with a range of 30 feet or more, they can cast that on targeting an enemy you both are observing, so I guess not AoE cantrips, instead of taking the other actions granted by this tactic. So this is flat out, potentially, depending on your group, like possibly like multiple times more powerful than anything else that's in here. And it potentially has some concerns depending on your group size. So a lot of what I like about everything that isn't this up until this point is that it has been delicately and carefully designed so that it is outstandingly awesome in a group of 6, 7 players somewhere in the very upper end of what people play with. But it hasn't produced like some kind of outrageous offensive options that are just like, for that size of group, this is just like 2 or 3 times stronger than if you're a small group. However, this power does do that. And I was thinking as we were going through, other than the fact that this had been previewed, that maybe most of the ones that provide strikes provide a certain number of strikes. So here's why I'm talking about this. In general, when you're budgeting the power of an ability, you have to take into account the fact that certain groups will have very different uses for it. For example, let's say in your group, you have the commander who does not gain benefits from their own ready, aim, fire. And you have like a melee fighter, and you have an archer and a spellcaster in your 4-person group. That's like pretty mixed, right? That group is going to get 2 attacks off of this. If instead of the archer, they had a guardian, they'll only get 1 off of this. If your group instead had 7 characters, all 6 of the others being psychics who can amp their cantrips, then you may suddenly get 6 focus spell level things as a reaction out of this. So it's very variable. And obviously, you can make something more powerful if you know what the limits are, if you know the control. That's the very, very smart thing in the design of Stupefying Raid and Demoralizing Charge, is that those do like a ton. The Demoralizing Charge has multiple saving throws against an effect, and it gives penalties and other things like that because it knows there's exactly 2 of these are going to happen. With Ready, Aim, Fire, I feel like might be better to take a look at how many characters should be able to do this, and if necessary, make it stronger so that the group that only has a few ranged characters or like a couple gunslingers or another class that would get a good use out of this can do really well with it, so that it doesn't have to be bounded by the possibility that 6 psychics or some other ridiculous group can do something really outrageous with it. Let it be stronger so that you, in an amount that you know that a normal group could do. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about that one. They didn't see that on any of the others so far. Let's take a look at the legendary tactics, though. So these are level 19. So they're almost end of the game. Once per 10 minutes, you and each squad mate affected by your commander's banner can attempt a ranged strike as a reaction against a single target you designate. Combine it all before adding weaknesses or resistances. If the designated target is a living creature, these attacks are death effects and gain the death trait. If they die, all other enemies within the affected area of your commander's banner must succeed at a will save against your class DC or be frightened too. So this is a once per 10-minute ready, aim, fire that does not reload or swap weapons, does not allow the spell thing, and does allow you to attack. That's very crucial because if we're playing my ranged commander that I'm saying I was going to build, for a group that's smaller and a little more modest, that is a significant increase because one of your archers wasn't going to get to do it otherwise, and now they can. Because that archer is me playing my ranged commander. Once again, obviously the psychic version of this doesn't go as hard, but it does mean that a very large group can get it, that has tons of ranged characters, can get a very different amount of benefit out of it than a mixed group or the one that's smaller. Let's take a look at Valkyrie's Charge. 3 actions, once per day. Restore 80 hit points to yourself and every squad mate affected by your banner. It has the healing trait. If they're unconscious, they immediately stand and pick up their drop weapons. Each affected ally can stride up to twice their speed towards an enemy they are observing. If they end their movement within an enemy in their reach, they can attempt to strike that enemy as a reaction. You and your squad mates can use Valkyrie's charge while burrowing, climbing, flying, or swimming instead of striding if you have the corresponding movement type. With that name, I was expecting it was going to bring them back from the dead too. Although that would have been maybe a bit too ridiculous if it also did that, but like the flavor of it would be hilarious if it brought them back as Einherjar and then they like died again after the fight. So this is a melee example of the thing we saw with the others. Now it is once per day, so it's a lot less often than you're going to be able to use it, but it could allow up to 9 creatures to make melee attacks, but reasonably it probably won't, because how many characters in your group are actually going to want to make melee attack? Now, I guess it doesn't say it has to be a melee attack. It does say the enemy has to be within their reach. So you may be, if you have an archer, sending your archer right up into like punching range of the enemy, and then they shoot their bow at them from there if they don't have a reaction they can spend on that, I suppose. It depends on how desperately they want to make the attack. And if there's not a way to increase the number of free reactions I can grant, then let me see. It says each of them strides up to twice their speed and attempt to strike as a reaction. So it doesn't say what striding their speed is or what standing and picking up the drop weapons is. I'm going to assume it's a free action because it can't be nothing. And it's obviously not a reaction because you use the reaction at the end on the strike. So I'm going to assume it's a free action for all that other stuff, and it just didn't say. In any case, that is one heck of an ability as well. They're level 19. They maybe, if they had a limit, an upper limit that was like a high upper limit, you wouldn't have to like try to arrange your group around it to do something really obscene, and maybe you would be able to make them even stronger when you say for a group that was like, well, we can't coordinate everybody to want to go into melee. We only have 2-3 people who want to do that. So it's great that this has a limit of 2 or 3 and gives even more boosts. Let's see what else we've got though. Because I do definitely like the ones that signal exactly 2 in terms of letting you have a more fluid group that doesn't have to completely coordinate around the commander to get some kind of double benefit from the commander's turns. And I like the idea of making it stronger, but for a smaller number of people. It also means if you have multiple commanders or a 2 and a 1 action, that it lets you split your group and be like, well, I'll give 1 action to these 2 because it affects 2 and 2 actions to these 2 or something like that. Let's take a look at the feats for the commander next. So our first level feat, Armored Regiment Training. You can treat heavy armor as being lighter than it actually is and can rest while wearing armor of any type. You and your allies use your normal speeds without including your armor speed penalty for exploration speed. Okay, so that's obviously very good for heavy armor in particular. It helps a little for medium armor, but the amount more that it helps for groups with heavy armor is a lot because it helps your exploration speed. And you wouldn't be able to rest in medium armor anyway. So you might want to get this, but let's see what else we have. We have Combat Assessment, where we can attempt to recall knowledge on a hit and after making a melee strike. Fighter has this, but our ability to use warfare lore on anything makes this better for us than fighter, which it should be for this class. That's great. Combat Medic, 1 feat. You can prepare at least 2 tactics. You are trained in medicine. You use your int modifier in place of your wisdom modifier for medicine checks and gain battle medicine. Okay. I'm not so sure about this being a feat. I don't think I like the fact that it is available to anybody who multi-classes in here. Paizo normally has traditionally kept things that are monkeying around with what modifier things use in the in class features. So they may want to take a look into a way to make it so that it's not dippable to make medicine into intelligence for anybody who's an intelligence-based class. Obviously for the commander, it's totally fine, and that's why most other classes would get it as a feature somehow. I'm not sure of a good way to do that. Let's look at Commander's Steed. You gain a young animal companion as a mount. All right, so we've got some mounts here, going cavalierish. Deceptive tactics. You can use warfare lore in place of deception modifier for deception checks to create a diversion or feint, and can use your proficiency rank of warfare lore instead of your proficiency rank. Oh, wait, I think they figured it out. I think that you can prepare at least 2 tactics is going to prevent the multi-class commanders from right after I said it on the stream, I got a ping from Paizo that was correct. So we don't know what the multi-class commanders are going to get, and they're probably not going to get that. That's why this seemingly irrelevant requirement was in there, of course. It took me a second to figure it out until I saw it the second time on a thing that replaced your stats. And meanwhile, actually, chat had already said that multiple times too. So you guys figured it out. You're all very clever. Took me a little while, but of course, that's how you, that is exactly how you stop the multi-classers from taking it. So this is great. It lets you do things you would want a commander to do without needing charisma. It's prevented from multi-classes having it. Fantastic. All right, so plant banner for 1 action. You plant your banner to inspire your allies to hold the line. Plant your banner in a corner of your square. All allies within a 30-foot burst immediately gain a number of temporary hit points equal to half your intelligence modifier. Okay, so it's not a lot of temporary hit points, but everybody gains it. They last for 1 round. Each time an ally starts their turn within the burst, they get them again. So that's why they're small. You're just going to keep getting them. It's kind of like regenerating temporary hit points. If it's attached to a weapon, you cannot wield that weapon while your banner is planted. So you definitely want to prepare to do this don't take any other banner actions and prepare to do this with your banner in hand, basically, but not on your weapon. Any effects that normally happen in an emanation on your banner happen in the burst. You can use it again while adjacent to your banner to retrieve it. Enemy adjacent can remove your banner. That's the issue, because that's going to make your allies frightened too, if that happens. Not frightened number 2, frightened also. And then the temporary hit points at 5th level increase to be equal to your intelligence modifier. At 15th level, they go to your level plus your intelligence modifier, which is, that one is a hella of a jump. Because at 14th level, you're getting 5, and at 15th level, you're getting 20. I feel like there could be maybe a smoother way to do that. Because if 5 is an amount that you would ever be appropriate at 14th level, 20 is probably not appropriate at 15th level, or vice versa. If 20 is the correct amount at 15th level, then 5 is way too few at 14th level. Maybe it could go from half your int to, for example, let's assume your level plus int mod is the correct amount to end at. Perhaps then it could go up at, I'm just going to say 7, 13, and 19, the level you get expert, master, and legendary, to full intelligence modifier, then half level plus intelligence modifier, then level plus intelligence modifier, something like that. So it doesn't jump from 5 to 20. All right, these are cool. I like pretty much all of these feats. It would be difficult to decide what to take in here, depending on my character. With my ranged character, though, that I'm talking about building, I think I might take Commander's Steed, because I can force my I can force 2 movements out of having a horse, so that I can keep away in case I need to move. And then later at 4th level with the mature companion, the horse can move for me for free, so that I can stay out of the way, do my commands on other people, and take my 1 bow shot in peace. Also, if I was melee, I would definitely get the horse, because I don't think I'm going to be able to give my own, movements very often. So 2nd level, roll initiative, free action. Replace one of your prepared tactics with another tactic in your folio. That is cool, because that is going to allow me to have certain tactics that are only good against certain creatures, and then pull it out on that creature. Now, the one issue with it is that it couldn't be combined with a free action on roll initiative that lets me recall knowledge about the creature. So if I didn't get a chance to scout it in advance, and this may be a benefit because it makes commanders better if they can do a little reconnaissance, I might not know without metagaming that this is a monster that has resistance by the time I needed to put in the anti-resistance one, for example. But I don't see that as purely a negative. It just is a kind of a wrinkle on it that we're going to have to take into effect. It is a 2nd level feat, after all. Maybe there's a higher level one that lets us do both of those 2 things, or switch it at the start of our turn, or some wild thing. So 2nd level feat, reaction, defensive swap. I like having some reactions in here, because often it looks like until higher levels, I won't be able to give myself a reaction from my tactics. You and your allies work together You and the required ally who is adjacent to you immediately swap positions with each other. Whichever of you was not the target of the triggering attack becomes the target instead. So it's if you were an adjacent willing ally or the target of an attack roll. So that's very strong. I remember seeing in some of the commentary that people were saying that the Guardian has the ability to take a hit after you've already been hit, but the ability to swap to a champion or something before the attack is resolved is very strong because it lets someone who is better at dealing with it even be the one that's targeted in the first place. We'll see, though. I think the Guardian gets to give themselves resistance. We'll see when we get to the Guardian. That's what I get for basing things on listening to what people are saying, but that is pretty cool. Guiding shot, 1 action flourish. Attempt to strike with the required weapon, a ranged weapon. Hey, that's for me, the ranged person. If I hit, the next creature other than me gets a +1 circumstance bonus or +2 if it's a crit. So it's similar to something that Fighter has, except for it's a flourish instead of being a press.
So by the way,
which makes it more powerful.
Doing a live unboxing while you're going on. I just got
do it. Do the unboxing. What's in there?
I just got
Weird Wastelands.
Weird
That's
Wastelands.
Cool. So you could all take a look at Steven opening Weird Wastelands while I'm reading this. That is like the perfect counterpoint to that for people who want to be watching something more interesting. But make sure you keep scrolling when I get to the new pages too. Perfect. 1 action setup strike. Attempt a melee strike against an enemy. If it's successful, they're off guard against the next attack one of your allies attempts against it before the start of your next turn. Okay, so that is cool. Let me see. What would happen if I hit people with multiple setup strikes? I think it wouldn't do anything because they would all kind of go to the next attack one of my allies attempts, but I would be tempted to give it a special thing where it's like multiple setup strikes, let you go through multiple allies, but it's a little complicated. I see why they didn't do that. It's still cool. There's so many ways to get off guard. I probably would take it if I had a rogue or somebody who needed some help and who was like ranged and we didn't think we would be flanking, but I wouldn't take it unless we knew that there wasn't another good way to get off guard. All right, so tactical expansion. Add 2 additional tactics to your folio. Hey, I figured that was going to be there. They did mention there was going to be a feat for it earlier. Awesome. I like having a lot of tricks up my sleeve. Right now in the playtest, there's not a lot of total tactics, and based on my group, I'm going to know mostly which ones I want, except for certain scenarios. In the final, I'm sure there will balloon out. My guess would be 1.5 to twice as many, but it could be very different than that. And I might start getting tempted to take this feat a bunch of times, especially since I can switch out a tactic at the beginning of the fight. Ironically, with a feat that I can't have at the same time. Too many good feats is a good problem to have. Rapid assessment, free action, you roll initiative, attempt to recall knowledge against one creature you're observing. See, I was saying you can't do that and adaptive stratagem at the same time. And now the class even literally has that.
So Mark's on a roll. Let's stop. Give me a break, Mark. Calm down. Hold on one second.
I'll take a break.
So hold on. Does this drive you crazy? Look at this. So they gave me dice, but then all the dice came in their own little
little bags. There you
their
go.
own little bags. Is that overkill to have dice with a bag within a bag? It's like, do you really need your little die in a little bag like that?
I think that it makes sure that they don't get scratched.
I don't have a flask. I guess actually, I know why they do that. Look, you got a little flask. Maybe I'll bring this too. It's so tiny though, but I guess that's because it's supposed to put hard alcohol in there. I've never had a flask before.
Karuma Setsu points out you can set up different foes if you want to. You definitely can, but I'd rather focus fire in most cases. And if I set up different foes, I'm asking my allies to not focus fire. Maybe at second level, you fighting enemies you can kill quickly enough that you want to do that.
We'll get him right back. And notice he doesn't even let me interrupt him. He just ignores me. I don't even think he hears me talking.
I heard you. I talked back to you about the little bags. I just figured people wanted to maybe watch you.
No, they're going through it. They probably
wanted to listen.
Well, people might want to also go to the bathroom and not miss anything. So, and then I'll add like my 50,000. Actually, it's a pretty good one though. Oh, this is huge. It's like my custom DM screen. I have more DM screens than I ever will know what to do with in a million years. Oh, okay, keep going.
People said set up is not restricted to once X per turn. Yes, that's correct. So you can use it as many times as you want. That's why I was saying it could be interesting if you did it 3 times, if you could make the next 3 attacks off guard. Because technically, if you used it 3 times on the same opponent, the effects wouldn't be cumulative because all of them would kind of discharge off on the next attack, I think. All right, let's move to 4th level. Banner Twirl, 1 action. You and any ally adjacent to you has concealment from ranged attacks until the start of your next turn. That's pretty good. If it gave concealment against all attacks, that would be ridiculously good because there's, I think, a 12th level feat that does that just for you. Obviously, not that many enemies have range, so you have to put a big investment to having this feat, which is what kind of balances it out with that. Observational analysis, 4th level feat requiring that we have the combat assessment. Which one was combat assessment? Is that the 1st level one that, yeah, where you attack and make a recall knowledge check? So this is when you use combat assessment against a target that you or an ally has targeted with a striker spell. Since the start of your last turn, you get a bonus on your recall knowledge. So attacks give you better recall knowledge, which you get on your attacks. I'm going to assume that you have to, the strike in combat assessment doesn't count because you haven't used combat assessment against someone who has already been hit by the strike, even though by the time you make the recall knowledge, the strike has happened. Based on the wording, I think that's correct. Shielded Recovery, Combat Medic, level 4. You can use the same hand you are using to wield a shield to treat wounds or use battle medicine. You're considered to have a hand free for other uses of medicine as long as the only thing you're holding is the shield.
That's good.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes it could cause an issue if you are a shield person level, and you want to do that.
And a lower, that is that actually is a big problem, especially at lower levels, but that's nice.
All right. So, let's see. Yeah. Also, when you use battle medicine on an ally while wielding a shield, they gain a +1 circumstance bonus to AC and reflex saves that lasts until the start of your next turn, or until they're no longer adjacent to you, whichever comes first. That's cool. I like that. Also, it's funny as if you also have lay on hands, you could give them status bonus and a circumstance bonus while healing them twice if they need a lot of healing. All right. Unsteadying Strike, 1 action, Flourish. Make a melee strike against an enemy within your reach. If the strike is successful, the enemy takes a -2 to their fortitude DC to resist, grapple, reposition, or shove, and a -2 to their reflex against disarmed until the start of your next turn. So that's pretty cool. That's going to make it so your allies can use combat maneuvers more reliably. And it's hard to give them a circumstance penalty against those things. So in that case, this would be excellent if you're using it with a maneuver-based character, like a swashbuckler gymnast. I like it. I'm liking what I'm seeing so far. Wave the Flag, 1 action. Each ally currently benefiting from your commander's banner reduces their frightened by 1 and can immediately attempt a new saving throw against a mental effect affecting them. Then there's a temporarily immune to wave the flag for 10 minutes. That's just handy to end mental effects. That's a lot of mental effects you can end. It is an investment because if you're not under a mental effect, you're not even going to use your 4th level feat every turn. But let me tell you, if your whole group is under a mental effect that's very debilitating, 1 action to suddenly potentially get that off of a bunch of characters, pretty useful. So we've got Battle Tested Warhorse. So this is going to be at 6th level, and it is Mature Animal Companion. It never attacks you. It actually looks like it does not gain the Druid automatic movement, which makes it not a must pick for me quite so much. I may wind up my hypothetical range character build, and certainly for a melee one where I don't have the actions to move around, might wind up using Cavalier or Beastmaster, if they still allow this in the APG, to try to snipe out the ability to get free movement because I don't have a lot of actions to move around. Efficient Preparation. Increase the number of tactics you can prepare at once by 1. That is very good, especially since at the time you get it, it goes from 2 to 3. Now, the very next level, it was going to already go up to 3, but going from 2 to 3 is awesome. 3 to 4 is great too. I love having more choices. However, if you already know you've picked the right choices or have ones you want to use basically every turn, you can get a different feat, such as Reactive Strike. Always good to have in a class, and here we have it. And we've got Shield Warden as well. That's in other classes as well. It lets you block for your allies. Very nice. Let's take a look at 8th level. Defiant Banner, 1 action. You and all allies affected by your commander's banner when you use this action gain resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage equal to your intelligence modifier till the start of your next turn. At 14th level, the value increases to intelligence plus half your level. Okay, so this is one that scales kind of more like what we were talking about before, because it goes from At 14th, like 13th level, it's 5, and then at 14th level, it's 12. So at least, I mean, I guess it does more than double at this point. So, but it's not as much as going from 5 to 20. That's certainly for sure. This is a lot of resistance. I guess at 8th level, it's going to be 4 resistance, which is about half your level. So it's like, that's not that much resistance. But at 14th level, when it goes up to 12, that is quite a lot. Because at that point, it becomes essentially equal to your level, sort of, almost like 1 below. Because you can end up with, or I guess you end up with 17 at most, which is 3 below. But it's scaled to be like nearly somewhere between 2 to 3 below your level, which is a ton of resistance. It does cost your action, but it's putting it onto your entire party. That is probably one of the most powerful mitigation effects in terms of like enemies that do physical damage that you can put onto your entire team. It does cost you a bunch of actions to keep doing it, but I'm specifically talking about once you get to 14th level, because at 8th and 10th, it's half your level. All right, officer's education. You get 2 skills you weren't trained in. You get expert in one you are trained in. You learn a common language you don't know, and you gain 1 general feat of 3rd level or lower. Okay, so let's take a look at what this is essentially giving you here. So 2 skills you aren't trained in is like, that gives a decent percentage of like an ancestry feat. Learning a language gives like half of a skill feat as well, which now you've got almost an entire ancestry feat. Now getting expert in a skill you're currently trained in, this is now pretty strong and is going towards what some other class feats that are lower level than 8th give you. And then you also gain a general 3rd level feat, which is about around where some of those ancestry feats would be. This is a lot of benefits. They're all not that strong though. So it's interesting because you're turning a very strong benefit into a lot more weaker benefits. It's something that a lot of classes don't have, but that gives you a lot of options to make your character have a broader education, which is what the feat is about. So that's pretty cool. Level 8 Rallying Banner. Once per 10 minutes, roll 4d6. Restore that many hit points to each ally affected by your commander's banner. It increases by 1d6 for every 2 levels. So it's 1 action. So that is a lot of healing. It's not very often, but I think everybody who could see your banner is affected by your banner. Yeah, is that right, or is there like a radius? Let me go back up. I've been remembering that there was definitely a radius that got penalties. Maybe there's a 30-foot radius on who's affected by your banner as well. No, you and all has a 30-foot emanation. Okay, so it's the same emanation as a heal, and it uses 1 die size smaller than a 3-action max level heal, and it is a 1-action ability. So that is incredibly good healing for the action cost. It cannot be used outside of combat. That makes perfect sense to me. Unrivaled analysis. Rapid assessment is required. Your experience allows you to derive even more information with rapid assessment, attempting 4 checks to recall knowledge with rapid assessment. Okay, that is pretty cool. I like making lots of recall knowledge checks. You can only do it on initiative, so it's not like those super high level feats that let you hypercognition every time. And it makes sense there. All right. So let's take a look at the 10th level feats. Battle Hardened Destrier is the nimble or savage animal companion situation. That's when it gains greater independence to stride or strike. So if I'm already 10th level, I could take those for sure. I definitely want that on my commander character. Drilled Reflexes. When you use your drilled reactions ability, you can give an extra reaction to up to 2 allies instead of 1. So that's here at level 10. It makes sense to me that these abilities are coming in at higher levels to increase the number of free reactions you can give, because your allies are more likely to have a really good reaction the higher in level you get. At low levels, maybe they don't. Maybe they do. At higher levels, they might. And if your group is such that they often can't afford to use their reactions on your tactics, you could choose free action tactics, but being able to give it to 2 lets you use any of those ones that target 2 allies to have them do something and not cost their reactions. That's That's a very good feat. It's the kind of thing that if you knew your group had valuable reactions, you'd almost want to be a class feature because it enables so much. Standard Bearer Sacrifice reaction. An opponent targets an ally with a ranged attack. You're observing both, and you're in range of the attack. So you flourish your banner to redirect their attention to you. And it basically forces them to attack you. And on a critical failure, you get a bonus to your AC against it. So that's pretty strong because there's not like a placement. There's not like any sort of requirements that you are next to your ally or anything like that. You could definitely always use it, but it only works against ranged attacks, whereas their second level ability has a lot of positioning requirements, but it's only gonna it'll work against anything. 10th level targeting strike. Whenever you hit with a ranged strike using your guiding shot, the next attack made by an ally is made with a +2 circumstance bonus, and the strike deals an amount of additional precision damage equal to your intelligence modifier. So when it says the strike, does it mean the strike from guiding shots or the strike that the ally made on their next attack? Also, I want to scroll back up to guiding shot because the wording there says next attack. Okay, so here's an interesting fact. Guiding shot gives the circumstance bonus on any attack, not just a strike. Also, targeting strike says that the strike deals damage equal to the intelligence modifier. Therefore, I'm going to assume that it's talking about your strike that deals the intelligence modifier because your allies thing that they're making an attack on might not be a strike. It could be a spell, attack, roll, or an impulse. I'm not very certain about that, but I think that at the very least, the fact that it says the strike indicates that somewhat more that it's more likely to be a that your strike that does that. All right, so 12th level, Fortunate Blow, 1 action. Flourish. Attempt to strike against an opponent. If the strike hits the next creature other than you to attack the same target before the start of your next turn, rolls twice on their attack roll and takes the higher result. This is a fortune effect. Okay, so obviously that's incredibly good, especially if you are going to hit. Obviously, if you miss, it's not great. But being able to give a true strike-like effect to the next person, especially if the next person is going to do some kind of outrageous attack that uses multiple actions, is incredibly good. And there's no limitation on it other than it does use your flourish and it's not an action compression. Perfected Evaluations, 12th level, requires unrivaled analysis. When you use rapid assessment, you can attempt to make 6 recall knowledge against enemies you are observing. So I think that this feat is one of the first ones I'm going to say is not very good. And that's mainly because of the fact that by the time you can make 4 and you spent an 8th level feat, that is a big improvement from 1. But the number of times there are, I guess you can make multiple against the same creature. Whereas, did the original one say that they have to be against different creatures? No, it's about creatures. I guess you might want to make 6 against a small number of creatures, but usually by the time you can make 4, you've got the main things that you want. Obviously, 6 is a big increase, but it's not as much of an increase multiplicatively or additively as 1 to 4. And we had to throw our 12th level feat on top of our 8th level feat. I would probably want to be able to make at least 8 if I had to take this other feat, and I still probably wouldn't take it because 4 is usually sufficient. Let's take a look at our 12th level, Reactive Interference. An adjacent enemy begins to use a reaction. This is similar, I think the Rogue has Reactive Interference. If the triggering creature's level is equal to or lower than yours, you disrupt it. Otherwise, make an attack roll against their AC to disrupt it. I think the Rogue has that reaction. I at least remember writing it for the Rogues. I think it has it. 14th level, Contact with the Enemy. Requires Adaptive Stratagem. You know the best laid plans rarely survive contact with the enemy, and you have prepared your allies to adapt with a wide range of contingencies. All right. So when you use Adaptive Stratagem, you can replace any number of your prepared tactics with others in your folio. So let me remind myself, is Adaptive Stratagem the one where, yes, when I roll initiative, I replace my prepared tactics. So, all right, I've got 14th level. I'm now going to replace my prepared tactics every single time. Okay, That is pretty cool. That's going to let me replace a huge amount of things from my tactics. All right, let's take a look at some of the other ones that we can get here. That's going to be one that's going to be hard to beat if you already have the other one, the requirement for it. Desperate Resuscitation. Prerequisites: Master in Medicine, Combat Medic. Requirements: holding our healer's toolkit. Attempt a DC 40 medicine check to revive a dead creature that's been dead for no more than 3 rounds. If you succeed, they come back to life with the effects of raised dead, except they are wounded, and then they're temporarily immune for 1 day. So this reminds me of, I think, was it called Miracle Worker, the medic archetype class feat? Let's see what our differences are from Miracle Worker. It's been a while. That one's 18th level. It's limited to once every 10 minutes, but the creature does not become temporarily immune for 1 day. So if you have danger-prone Daphne in your team who is constantly dying, you'd rather have every fight, which happens every 10 minutes, you'd rather have Miracle Worker. It does have a limit of 2 rounds, whereas Resuscitation is a limit of 3 rounds, which is a longer limit. Miracle Worker is much higher level. Whereas if you have multiple creatures dying in the same fight, you'd rather by far have Desperate Resuscitation. And then Quickening Banner, 14th level, 1 action, once per 10 minutes. Each ally affected by your commander's banner is quickened for 1 round to stride or strike. All right, that makes sense. Cool. Let's move on to 16th level. Confusing Commands, 2 actions. Deceptive Tactics prerequisite. Each enemy within the area affected by your commander's banner must succeed at a will save against your class DC or become confused for 1 round. Targets who succeed at their saving throw are temporarily immune for 1 day. Okay, so that is very strong. Confusion targeting everybody is, I think, an 8th level spell or 8th rank spell, which is about the same time you get this feat, and the feat has no usage limitation other than that you can't use it against the same enemies again. Now, Confusion does potentially confuse for a lot longer, though. So there is that. This only confuses them for 1 round. It is really good. It's not incapacitation. I like it. I think that the fact that it has a shorter duration is definitely going to help to balance it a lot. Plus, you can't use some of your tactics that cost 2 actions that you may have really wanted to use. Undaunted Discipline is a reaction. When your turn ends, if you're affected by a mental effect, you find a loophole. It's like how the rogue can find a loophole and suppress the mental effect. After the first round of dealing with it, you don't deal with it on the second round. It's like, I think, Cognitive Loophole, or it was called something like that. 18th level, Demand Surrender, 2 actions. You and your allies outnumber enemies on the battlefield. It's incapacitation. And you or an ally has either restrained an opponent or reduced them to 0 hit points since the start of your last turn. Choose 1 opponent you're observing, command them in a strong voice, and they must attempt a will save against your class DC with the following results. Success, they can't take any hostile actions that include you as a target for 1 round. Failure, as success, and the target is fleeing for 1 round. Critical failure, the creature drops any weapons or items they are holding, lies prone on the ground, and does not take any hostile action against you or your allies for 1 minute or until you or one of your allies attacks them. Probably means uses any hostile action against them, not just an attack. I think we all know what it's supposed to be. So that one's pretty interesting. Mostly because even the success effect is that they can't take hostile actions that include you as the target. So it could be useful even against creatures that you know are going to trigger the incapacitation clause if you think you can get them to get a failure that turns into a success. It's definitely cool for the sort of surrender-based build that we're talking about. And if they aren't getting the incapacitation bump, then they're in big trouble because all 3 of the success types, except for critical success, are going to potentially limit them a lot, especially if you're getting up in their grill. 18th level, when you use your drilled reactions ability, you can grant an extra reaction to up to 4 allies. So that's really strong if you have one of those that affect like your whole party and your whole party's coordinated with it. Usually you might not need more than 2, but some of the tactics that I identified as potentially allowing a very coordinated party to do something ridiculous would benefit from Practic Reflexes as well. 20th level, Glorious Banner. Your banner is now 60 foot or 80 feet with Plant Banner. The will save bonus is +2. You gain a +1 on AC, Fortitude, and Reflex saves. Enemies take a -2 on will saves as long as they can see the banner if they're in the area. That's really cool. It's a lot of buffs. It is level 20, so it makes sense. It's kind of, because it's bonuses, it's kind of thing I like, but that I think that maybe some people will underestimate it because it's not as like visceral, but the bigger aura at least gives you something that's more visible. Pennant of Victory, 1 action once per 10 minutes. You and all allies affected by your banner gain a +4 status bonus to attack and damage rolls, +10 foot status bonus to all your speeds, and 40 temporary hit points until the start of your next turn. Heck, at that point, you could give an even larger status bonus to your speeds. I feel like 40 temporary hit points and 4 on attack and damage rolls is sufficiently outrageous to be like, yes, I see why this is a capstone. The 10 to speeds is good, but it kind of like doesn't fit with the other ones. I could see even like 30 to speeds, just be like, yeah, all 3 of these are pumped through the roof, large bonuses that you get for 1 turn, for 1 action. This is a lot for 1 action. Obviously, it's a 20 level feat. So let's take a step back before we go into Guardian. We spent about an hour here looking at this class. This is an awesome class. It can do a lot of things. And it is able to have cool tactics. It has great feats that either synergize with the tactics or give you more of sort of the commander tactician style play style that the tactics didn't do on their own. I think that increasing the number of tactics that exist is really going to make this class sing. Right now, at the very least, what I'm seeing from it is that there's something really cheesy you could probably do with psychics in particular. Even if you're not a psychic, with like metal darts, or that at very low levels, the one where everybody shoots out 7.5 damage ranged at, oh wait, you don't have that at low levels, so it doesn't matter. Mostly psychics. By the time you get the effects that let everybody go, you're at the point where cantrips have scaled down, unless you have some way to boost them up. Maybe also other classes that have special cantrips, like Witch. They don't have to be damaging, even though I get the sense that it's supposed to be for ranged attack cantrips, but technically you could use it with ranged saving throw cantrips, debuff cantrips, or anything else right now. So that one particular one is a little bit different than the other ones. Other than that, it seems to give you a wide variety of tactics for whatever your group is going to do, and a lot of options to respond to your enemies with something interesting or different. I'm also curious to what people in chat thinks about this. To me, look, I didn't play a lot of 4th edition, but I did play some of it, and I definitely read everything that was in the initial books for 4th edition. And the Warlord was a class I really, really liked the idea of, but some of the implementation in the Warlord had some things that were like a little bit didn't fit together as well. I feel like this Commander class, in terms of like future-proofing and protecting, I remember the Warlord. Someone was talking about the Warlord plus the Horizon Walker in 4E, like had some weird combinations and things. This seems like it's protected while also giving you awesome stuff in such a way that it's not going to create many, if any, outrageous combos that do more than you would expect, due to the fact that other than those few that I mentioned, it's often very specifically tells you what you do. It takes careful account of free actions and reactions, how many extras are being given out, how often an individual ally can use the effects, and how many allies can use any individual tactic that results in an attack. So this is definitely a really cool class. I think is a great and worthy successor to the Warlord class already. And when it has more tactics, it's going to be even more outstanding. So I like it. Let's see. People in chat are saying not allowing kineticists to attack is kind of annoying. I mean, if it allowed for a 1-action impulse, that would probably be nice, but I don't know if they want to like have to put in bespoke stuff a lot of times. Let's see. Yeah, others in chat are saying it has really good options. I agree. I like this one so far. Let's see what we think about the Guardian next. Cooley Frog says, I'm going through this like their college professor when he needs to cover one more chapter before an exam. So this is how I did the other playtests, and a lot of people gave me positive feedback because they wanted to hear about it, they wanted to analyze it, they wanted to do it like pretty quickly and at a fairly rapid chop. So I'm trying to do it at a speed that is such that it respects your time while also giving you the kind of insights and analysis so that you come out of it feeling like you really understand the class too. So let's take a look at the Guardian. I love classes that do guarding stuff. I like me a champion class, and I want to see if the Guardian is going to be an awesome addition. I'm sure it will be. Let's see. So the Guardian has 10 hit points. Okay. I was thinking if it's guard, all the guards, that was possible it had 12. Now I'm thinking it's probably going to have damage mitigation on it because it's unlikely to have the kind of healing that was in Lay on Hands for the champion, although maybe that's what it has. It'll be a mystery. I'd seen more talk about the commander beforehand, so this is going to be even more of a surprise for all of us together. So they are trained in perception, expert in fortitude and will, trained in reflex. So they're not as vigilant towards like attacks coming in and things like that with their perception as the commander, and they have fortitude instead of reflex. They're trained in athletics and 3+ mod additional skills. They are trained in simple and martial weapons and unarmed attacks, all armor, unarmored defense, Guardian class DC. Let's listen to the concept of Guardian together so that we know what they're going for in this playtest. You are the shield, steel wall that holds back the tide of deadly force exhibited by enemies great and small. You are clad in armor that you wear like a second skin. You can angle your armor to protect yourself and your allies from damage and keep foes at bay. You also make yourself a more tempting target to take the hits that might have otherwise struck down your companions. Okay, so this is a very interesting concept that I immediately think is going to run into some trouble with playtester perceptions, because making yourself a tempting target is the kind of thing that provides like soft enemy control that but it's hard to see because it was provided by virtue of making yourself a more tempting target, and sometimes we don't like being ourselves tempting targets. I'm always someone who wants to raise my defenses as much as possible, so I get it. During combat encounters, you are unparalleled in your use of armor, squeezing every last drop of protection it offers. You stay close to your most vulnerable allies, taking the hits that target them. You can taunt your foes, drawing their ire and attention so they attack you instead of others. During social encounters, depending on your background, you might be friendly or coercive during negotiations. You usually feel more comfortable on the field of battle when you can more easily tell friend from foe, but that doesn't mean you can't bond with other soldiers or those who have experiences similar to yours. While exploring, you remain vigilant against possible threats, ready to step up at a moment's notice to guard your allies. Constantly wearing armor has made you stronger, allowing you to surmount physical challenges such as moving heavy objects or scaling walls. In downtime, your armor and shield might have gotten damaged during your latest adventure, so you often spend time repairing and maintaining them. You might also earn some extra coin doing manual labor or extra work as a town guard. You might stand firm in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds, trusting in the strength of your armor to pull you through. Good-naturedly joke about how the damage you've taken has effectively saved the lives of your companions. Be slow to trust the motives of anyone who isn't one of your allies, assuming they mean to do you harm. Others probably appreciate the sturdiness of your armor, especially when it absorbs an attack meant for them. Don't understand why you'd want to put yourself in danger by taunting your enemies, and feel safer when you're standing beside them on the field of battle. All right, so let's see how this class manages to deliver that sort of fantasy here. So it has a reminder on resistance. Reminder, a Guardian's armor allows them to resist damage in several specific ways, from armor specialization to the intercept strike action. Remember that if you have more than one type of resistance that would apply to the same instance of damage, use only the highest applicable resistance. Your plate armor gives you resistance to slashing damage when you're struck with a blade, but the resistance to all damage from intercept strike is usually higher when you take a similar attack for an ally. That's a good reminder to include. I think a lot of people, if they're new to the game but want to go into the playtest, which happens sometimes, you get excited, you might forget that. All right. So we've got ancestry, background, attribute boost, initial proficiencies. We all know that we have that. Guardian armor. So we're going to start with the armor specialization effects of medium and heavy armor. So that's pretty cool because those resistances are like, they're not that high at the beginning, but usually characters get them at the beginning for characters, usually a higher level than first. So at first level, they're actually quite good. If you know the enemy is going to attack you with, for example, slashing damage, having resistance to slashing damage, I think, what is the amount that you start with from armor specialization? Is it like 2? It's some amount that is a pretty good amount when you compare it to like first level damage. It says here, armor groups. I'm taking a look at it right now on Archives of Nephis. So I created these abilities, but I don't remember. Yes, it is 2 plus the value of the potency rune. That's what I thought. So, like, look, getting 2 of the damage or 3 when you first get it at higher levels is great. It's a small amount off of every attack, but 2 at first level is so good against level -1 creatures. If they match your damage type, they're not going to be doing much to you. Even level 0 creatures won't hit that hard. So this is potentially going to be a slept on benefit, but the problem is the rock, paper, scissors. If you fight an enemy that doesn't have your damage type, you're not going to be as happy. Plus, if they're like Jaws and Claw and you protect against one of the 2 damage types, they could switch to the other one when they see that. So we've got Intercept Strike. Reaction, an adjacent ally takes physical damage. We fling ourselves in front of it, taking the damage, but resist it with 2+ our level. So that's really good because it essentially is like a champion's reaction, except that instead of like enfeebling the enemy or letting your ally step or taking a strike, we're applying the remaining damage to ourselves instead of to the ally. So the ally takes nothing no matter what. That's particularly good, and it's especially good, ironically, not just for PCs, but if you have NPC guardians who are like low level and don't really matter, and then they have some allies who are high level and really do matter, the NPC guardians are huge annoyance because you can sort of force the PC's attacks that deal physical damage to actually hit the guardians, and then the targets that are of any value, they stay up. So the enemy NPC, so you would basically be like, you should be attacking these low-level guardians because you probably crit them. Whereas you had to attack lots of times to try to hit the real target. And then even then, by the time you hit the level +2 creature with their high AC, the guardian just siphons it off, taking much less damage than if you had attacked them yourself. Shield block, of course, something would be wrong. I would just say that I would petition that it needs to be added if it was not in here, and it is. Taunt. So we knew from the previews there was going to be a taunt. Let's see what it does. 1 action. It says you get an enemy to focus their ire on you. Even mindless creatures are drawn to your taunt. It does not have the mental effect. Choose a creature within 30 feet who must attempt a will save against your class AC. I guess that's a typo. Sorry, I stuttered over it because my mind tried to auto-correct it. Regardless of the result, it is immune to your taunt until the beginning of your next turn. If you gesture, this action gains a visual trait. If you speak, it gains the auditory trait. And presumably, you need to do one of those 2 things. Yes, you have to do one of those 2 things. So they will not make a will save. On a critical success, nothing happens. On success, they get a +2 circumstance bonus to attack rolls against you and DCs of effects that target you, but take a -1 to circumstance penalty to attack rolls and DCs when taking a hostile action that doesn't include you as a target. As success, but the penalty is -2 on the failure. As success, but the penalty is -3 on the critical failure. Now, when it says include you as a target, I'm going to assume that an AoE needs you to be in the area, even if you weren't targeted by it. And as long as you are, that they don't take the penalty, because that would be a little weird if you were like, well, you get a +2 against me, but since I'm technically not a target, you also get a -1 against me and everybody else. I think that the intent is pretty clear here, that it's meant to include area as well. Area and the way it refers to targets is wishy-washy throughout the game. This is not a Guardian-specific thing. So this is very interesting because you're going to be very easy to hit at first until you get presumably early expert in armor, and we'll scroll down, but I'm sure that you will. You're going to be at a point where your AC is actually not higher than your fellow party members, other than if they didn't have heavy armor, and they're going to get a +2 to hit you. That's going to make you as hittable or more as the barbarian at first. But in exchange, you're protecting allies who may be even squishier than that. So this feels like an action that's going to get way more powerful with either feats to buff it or at higher levels when I've actually got more proficiency in my AC than anybody else has. Whereas at first level, it's not necessarily going to help as much. It may help with saving throw DCs, though, because of the fact that if they're taking a large penalty on saving throw DCs, it's hard to give circumstance penalty to those, and it can help protect your allies with weaker will saves, for example. Let's take a look at the threat techniques. This looks like it is the class path. Choose either ferocious vengeance or mitigate harm. Interesting. These look like they're really different, guys. Enemies with Ferocious Vengeance that ignore your taunts take the brunt of your anger, and you deal 2 additional damage on strikes against them, which goes up to 4 and then 6. So if they attack someone other than you while taunted, you're just going to do more damage. Whereas Mitigate Harm is complete opposite. That's where, so Ferocious Vengeance is, I assume you're not going to attack me anyway. Now I will hit you. Mitigate Harm is, I think you are going to attack me, possibly because of the +2 to attack rolls. Now, when you're taunted, I gain resistance equal to 2 plus half my level against all the attacks. But it's only from critical hits. Okay. So that's interesting. It goes up to 4 plus half level at 5, 6 plus half level at 11, and 15, and 8 plus half level at 15. So that's a scaling that's smoother than some of the ones in the Commander that kind of rocket around, because instead of using intelligence, or in this case, our key ability score, which I forgot to say is strength, even though I did say intelligence for that. It's not using strength or con or anything, so it makes it scale much more smoothly to 2, 4, 6, 8 plus half your level, and going up to 18 eventually. So that's pretty interesting effect. It helps in case the +2 to AC creates a critical hit. It certainly helps if you were going to be crit anyway. So it's good if you think the enemies will attack you, which probably based on your build, you can probably make that even more likely. We'll see. So you have skill feats, general feats, skill increases. Everybody's got those. 3rd level, tough to kill. Gain diehard general feat and retrain if you already had it. The first time each day you'd be reduced to dying 3 or higher. You stay at dying 2 instead. That's really interesting and allows for some unusual situations where you could get your wounded value up very high. Because even if your wounded value was so high, it would put you to dying 3 or 4 and right away. It'll only put you to 2 with your first time during the day with tough to kill.
By the way, there was a super chat.
Oh, let's take a look at the super chat. What did it say, Steven? It says Lord of the Unfinished Project.
It says Lord of Unfinished Projects. This reminds me of favorite parts of 4E. See?
Yeah.
This is very 4E, but you know what?
It reminds me of some of
4E.
cool. There are a lot of cool things in 4E.
Oh,
like
4E
I didn't play
combat,
a lot of 4E.
4E combat was second to none. Like 4E combat was amazing.
I had things I loved about 4E combat and things I didn't like about 4E combat, and they were kind of
the martial
they
combat
were kind of tied to each other in some ways.
I felt.
But the things that I didn't like are not in here. The things that I didn't like were usually that like they can sometimes get to the point where things had a lot of hit points, and so they took a long time.
Oh no, that was complete. A big problem with 4E is that you could never do that much damage, and they couldn't do that much damage to you. So you would have these monsters with 200 hit points, and then even at the highest levels, you could do like 20 points of damage, and then sort of like these fights would take forever.
Jedi Protector said the same thing I did in there, but yeah. So again, there are things I didn't like. There are things I liked a lot about 4E combat.
It was
and the things that I liked, I'm seeing in these classes, and the things that I didn't like, I'm not. Well, I mean, you can't just add to the Guardian and Commander class that suddenly the fights will become a slog. I guess you could have a Defender class that makes the fights into a slog. It's true. But the Guardian doesn't seem like it's doing that right now. It seems pretty dynamic.
No.
Let's see what else it gets. So it does get early expert armor at level 5. That's when you're really going to be happy, because even with the +2 circumstance bonus to attack you, the enemies still are only equally likely to hit you as they are anybody else. And I know you can raise your shield. Your allies might not have one. So even then, you might be tankier than people think you were going to be. But with armor expertise, you're in a very good shape, because with a shield and armor expertise, even with the +2, you're probably the tankiest person in the party, unless there's also a champion, in which case, well, you might want to do something different. Reflex expertise at level 5, that's sooner than the commander got their expertise in their last save. I believe that was at 9th. Level 7, we've got expert perception, which that is true. We were missing that as well. And we have that here. And we gain a reaction whenever we roll initiative for combat, can only use for reactions from Guardian feats or class features, which basically means that so now remember, your GM can decide that you gain a reaction anyway before your first turn if you knew that the enemies were there and you weren't like kind of completely surprised by it. So this is just, if you were completely surprised, the Guardian still has a reaction, but they only use it for their Guardian abilities. That's how wary they are. Honestly, the fact that Guardian gives me the vibes of that is kind of why I was surprised they were lower in perception to begin with, because they gave me the vibe of like, I'm always ready. I'm looking out everywhere. I've got to protect everybody. All right, so we get weapon expertise at level 7. Interesting. That is after most other martial classes get weapon expertise. In fact, even the champion used to get it at level 5. I don't know if that means it's going to get it at level 7 in Player Core 2. We're going to have to see. But it is true that the champion had armor expertise at level 7, though. So fair is fair. We did get armor expertise before anybody else. We have to keep that in mind. I think it's most likely that champion will stay how it was. That's my guess. I have no inside information. Let's see. 9th level, Battle Hardened. Fortitude Master, Juggernaut style situation. Guardian expertise, 9th level, Guardian DC Expert. That's kind of more similar to what most classes have than Commander. Armor Mastery, 11th level. Your proficiency with medium and heavy armor increases to Master. At 11th level. Keep in mind that Champion gets their Armor Mastery at... When did they get their Armor Mastery? It is at 13th, the same time as their Weapon Mastery. So this is continued to be 2 sooner than the Champion, assuming Champion doesn't change. Weapon Specialization at 11th level. So it's at... Weapon Specialization is very delayed. Or no, it's not. I guess it's the same amount delayed as their... No, it is very delayed. It's 4 levels delayed. It's more delayed than Expertise was. So your damage is actually quite low if you took the Protect Against Crit build until level 11. And in fact, your accuracy at levels 5 and 6 is the same as like a caster, other than that you had the better starting stat, but at level 5, the caster could boost it. So it's probably the same as a caster. So fortunately, you have a lot of defensive and protective and control abilities, it looks like, but a War Priest is probably making you cry in certain ways. You have way good AC. Let's take a look at Greater Armor Specialization. So double the value of your armor's potency rune when calculating the resistance gain from Armor Specialization. Okay, so that's going to give us probably a like a 6 resistance to everything of our type, which is really cool. I like that a lot. If you have the correct damage type in your armor specialization, it's going to ablate a decent amount of every attack against you that is physical. There might be feats that give us more types. I don't know what we're going to see moving onward. That's going to be interesting. Legendary armor is level 15. That is 2 levels sooner than champion again. Unyielding Resolve is Will Say's Master at 15th level. It's basically resolve type situation. Now we got Greater Weapon Specialization and Weapon Mastery at the same time at level 17. So that is only 2 levels late for Greater Weapon Specialization, whereas regular Weapon Specialization is 4 levels late. But it is also going to be 4 levels late for Weapon Mastery. So you're very, very, very late to Weapon Mastery compared to other martial classes. And by then, even the War Priest is almost going to get it. And the War Priest, honestly, at level 19, like, I would probably play War Priest over most martials because they get so many spells and other things anyway. But here, you at least do get it 2 levels before the War Priest. I'm looking forward to seeing what feats you get for this, because I really, really like the special abilities that started off here. They're creative and good, and I'm thinking the feats are going to be as well. At 19th level, we get a basic evasion type situation, it looks like, and you add your armor's item bonus to AC instead of our dexterity modifier against damaging reflex saves. Does that mean that I had 6 for my full plate, or does that mean I had 9 for my +3 potency full plate? Because if it means I had 9, then that is a lot. That might as well be legendary, but sort of isn't. That's kind of interesting. I think maybe it does mean we had 9, and so we kind of might as well be legendary on the damaging ones, but not the other ones. All right, well, there we go. Because I mean, your item bonus is 9 after the potency raises it. So I'm gonna be taking a look at these feats, because that 4 level delay on Weapon Mastery is pretty late, especially since a class like War Priest gets Master Weapons at level 19, which is already slap in the face to a lot of marshals in some ways. This class being delayed up until that point means that it's probably going to get some really good feats to go along with it. And I did hear a little chatter online that this class has some of the best feats in the game, and I think that would make sense.
So by the way, real quick, someone wanted
yes.
to know, what does the playtest mean exactly? You want to
What does
that?
the playtest mean? Okay, that's a good question. It means that this is very preliminary. They could change dramatically in the final. A lot of people who are new to Pathfinder may think that playtests are like those beta releases on a video game where it's like, this is early access, it's a beta. But when you look at it, it's like, this game is playable. It may have bugs, it may have a few balance issues, and they're not going to change it much. They put a lot of assets into it. Paizo does not have this viewpoint. When the Paizo playtest, anything and everything could change. There's no commitment that it has to be the same as it is now. If you find issues, talk about it in the playtest surveys. Huge amounts of the game could change. If it's for a new game like Starfinder, huge amount of the class could change if it's for a new class like these. They are much more open to change than people are used to with video games. Keep that in mind. It's printed word. It's easier to change it than if you've already coded like tens of thousands of lines of things and put in all these art assets for something in the video game. So keep that in mind. That's a very, very important question. I'm very glad you asked that. Thank you. So let's look at the feats. I really like the intercept. I like the special abilities I've seen so far. I'm going to need these feats to justify getting my attack that much later for mastery, the high level ones. So I'm very, very excited to see those because I love defensive characters. So first level bodyguard. During daily preparations, choose an ally to be the one you're bodyguarding. When you intercept against that ally, they gain resistance to physical damage equal to 1 plus half your level for a round. So if the enemy wants to make follow-up attacks on them, well, too bad. That's really cool. So if you have one ally, you know you're going to use this a lot, you can protect them a heck of a lot. 1 plus half your level might only start out at 1 at first level. 1 is, like I talked about before with 2, 1 is actually a decent amount of resistance at low levels against certain like pylon tactics of enemies or enemies that can hit you multiple times. It'll scale up to eventually 11. I like that as a first level feat. Super cool. Larger than life. You don't get larger, but you're treated larger for the purpose of affecting creatures with disarm, grapple, reposition, shove, and trip while wearing heavy armor, and for the purpose of other creatures trying to eat you because your armor is so big. That's cool. I like that. I'd probably take Titan Wrestler so I could save the first level feat, just because first level feats are a limited resource, but I like it as well. Long distance taunt. When you taunt, you can target someone up to 120 feet. That could be good in larger maps. If you mostly play on Paizo adventure paths, they usually don't have big maps because of the space constraints in flip mats and in certain things. So do it if your GM has giant battlefields. Otherwise, take one of these other ones. Reactive shield, awesome first level feat. That's always going to be the one to beat because it can retroactively put our shield up if that was what it would take to stop an attack. Perfect. Shoulder check. 1 action with medium or heavy armor. Make a fist strike even if you don't have a hand free. If you're wielding a gauntlet or spike gauntlet, you make a strike with one of them instead. If this hits, the target is off guard for the rest of your turn. Okay. I don't like that much as the other ones, but I can see some potential benefits for it in action economy if you need to make a bludgeoning strike for some reason while also having a two-handed weapon out. I think there are other ways to go about that. Getting off guard for the rest of your turn could be an interesting way to set yourself up if you're the only person in melee or who can do that. I'd probably usually prefer reactive shield if I have a shield, or maybe bodyguard. But let's see the next one. Unkind shove. When you successfully shove a creature, that creature takes bludgeoning damage equal to your strength modifier. That's always a fun one, especially if you combine it with, there's some feats for, I think, fighter, where your shield, every time you block, just automatically does a shove as a free action. You could start throwing in some extra damage. Super cool. All right, second level, armor break, 2 actions. I wonder if this is going to be like that champion feat where you break your armor in order to, I think, negate a bunch of damage. If you're wearing a medium or heavy armor that's not broken and your current hit points are at half your maximum or lower, you make a melee strike. If it hits, deal 2d6 additional damage, which increases by 1d6 at 6. So it's 3d6 at 6, then 4d6 at 10th, then 5d6 at 14th, then 6d6 at 18th. So that is a lot of additional damage. It is 66 is about a little bit more than a power attack would deal in total into the additional damage alone. Is that right? No, it's the same amount of additional damage as power attack deals at 18. So it's a lot. It starts out about where power attack is. It's better at 6, then power attack goes up. It's around there. Your armor is the broken condition. While it's broken, you don't take its penalty to speed. If your armor has the bulwark trait, you retain that bonus to reflex saves, but is decreased by 1. Okay, I'm not sure that's worth it for second level compared to power attack necessarily. It's very, very good if you have a small weapon and you're going to power attack, though. So I will point out, I compared it to power attacking with a large weapon, and you might not have one because you have a shield. Even so, breaking your armor is pretty.
Are you talking about breaking? Are you talking about an armor break?
Yeah.
You know the problem with these. Listen, people who are listening to me, how many people actually break your opponent's armor or weapons? Because my group will never do that, because in their mind they're breaking their own.
This is breaking your own weapon. This is breaking your own weapon.
I know, but it's worse. It's like breaking either your weapon or breaking your opponent's weapons or armor is always bad, because in your mind it's like, oh, that's my weapon now. That's my armor. That's my loot. And why would I want to break it? I'm just curious if people ever want to do that, because here you're breaking your own just to do a little bit of extra damage.
You're breaking your own, and the amount of damage, the amount that it beats power attack is not by a ton unless you have a pretty small weapon. And so I don't know if I would want, I mean, it doesn't destroy it, Steven, but it gives you penalties until you fix it that
it's a huge pain.
Feel a little prohibitive for that. I wouldn't take it, but that doesn't mean that there isn't some combo with it later. Jonathan S says the third level 1 feat where you taunt from 120 feet is Monty Python Knights taunting you a second time.
It is.
All right. So level 2 other feats. Covering Stance is a stance. One ally adjacent to you gains lesser cover until the start of your next turn. The ally loses the benefit if they move to not be adjacent to you. If you intercept against that ally, they can step as a free action. Okay, that's interesting. So you're going to give an ally 1 AC. That would work well with Bodyguard. You're just continually, just for this one specific person, you are making them in a great position. Hampering sweeps 1 action until the beginning of your next turn until you move, whichever is first. Foes within reach of the weapon you're wielding or you're unarmed attack can't use move actions to move outside of the reach of your weapon or unarmed attack. They can still move to other squares within your reach. Whoa! What the heck? Okay, I knew there were going to be feats in here that were good. There's no attack roll. There's no saving throw. There's no incapacitation. They cannot move out of the reach of the thing that you have. Let me see the exact wording on this. It says the weapon you're wielding or your unarmed attack can't use it to move outside the weights of your weapon.
That's broken.
That is really strong. Imagine if we have the low-level Mook Guardian enemies that I was talking about before, just standing up next to your PCs and using this. I think that the PC would probably throw something at me if I told them that they just they can't move until they kill the thing. The easiest
way to find if things are
really
broken
strong. I said I thought the feats were going to be strong because of the fact that they do lose things.
That's
but
like in level
this is
2.
A little too multi-class dippable, though.
Well, here's the thing. I always say put that feat on an enemy, and put it on that.
I just said that.
Oh, I didn't hear you.
I said put it on a Mook enemy.
Oh no,
not even a big enemy, and then. Your allies can't go up to the enemies they want to attack.
If you don't think it's broken, always say, oh, that's not broken. It's like, okay, I'm going to put that on all the people, all the bad guys you fight. And they'll be like, oh, that thing is broken. I'm like, that's right, it's broken. And
someone asked if you could use step to escape it. And no, I don't think so, because it's not not a reaction. It's just they can't.
There has to be a save. Like that just working is broken.
That's a little weird to me.
It's totally broken. Making
at
a
this
save
level, I would
fine.
expect something that was more like that all the squares within your reach are difficult terrain for your enemy or something like that.
Yeah,
so it makes it harder to move and they can't step. Something like that. Whereas just like you're stuck, level 2, you're not getting out is very, very strong.
Yeah,
now, remember,
ridiculous.
There are some things in the chassis that are very weak offensively later on, but at level 2, you haven't even hit that part yet. And it is dippable from other classes. So let's keep going. Two-handed weapons gain the parry trait. If they already had it, they give a +2 parry. So this is very good. It's especially good with the commander's ability to free action activate your parry trait if it's a +2, because that's for one action. If a lot of people have this, you can give +2 to a lot of people. Now, you don't always have enough actions to use the parry trait, but if I'm going to use a two-handed weapon with Commander, so far, I think I would get this, possibly with so I can use a reach weapon and then get myself some extra AC. And when I say I would get this, I really mean I would take Hampering Sweeps. But assuming that that's changed so that it doesn't auto-lock down the opponents, then I might take a feat other than Hampering Sweeps. So shielding taunt for one action, you're wielding a shield, raise a shield, then taunt. Your taunt gains the auditory trait, and they take a -1 on their save. What's not to love about some action compression flourish? That's great. I was wondering if I would have enough actions to taunt and raise a shield, and the answer is yes, although only at level 2. I definitely would take this, other than the fact that I was already taking Hampering Sweeps. So that's going to make it tricky for me to raise my shield and taunt. I would probably just not taunt and use Hampering Sweeps. And then at 4th level, I might take shielding taunt, although let's see the 4th level feats, because maybe I'll have something else I'm going to take. All right, so 4th level, area cover. You're wearing medium or heavy armor. You're in an area effect requires a reflex save and have at least one ally adjacent to you. You take a -2 circumstance penalty to your reflex save. Each ally adjacent to you gains standard cover against that area effect, granting them +2. So that's pretty cool, especially if you already taunted the enemy. So you already were going to take a penalty. Or wait, no, you weren't going to take a penalty. They were going to get a bonus. So, okay, that can be a little tricky if you're going to give that much of a swing because you give them a bonus and you take a penalty. But it does give bonuses to way more people than it hurts. However, I probably would go level 2 to get shielding taunt instead of that if I had a shield because of the fact that I already obviously took Hampering Sweeps as my level 2 feat. Let's check the next one. Level 4. While your shield is raised, you gain the benefits of Avert Gaze. Okay, that is just a neat visual that I probably wouldn't take because there aren't enough creatures that have a gaze effect, but it's just kind of cool that you get it for free automatically while your shield is up and it doesn't cost you an action. It's the kind of thing that would be like, I wish this could be thrown in as a ribbon with another ability somehow. All right, Flying Tackle, 2-action flourish. Stride, then leap. So it's like Flying Kick for the monk. If you end your movement adjacent to a foe, you can attempt to trip that foe. If you succeed at the athletics check, you get a critical success. So it deals extra damage. Critical success is not as outrageous as some of the other ones. You can use it with burrowing, climbing, flying, or swimming instead of striding. So it's like Flying Kick with a trip. That's cool. I like it. I definitely would consider it, except for that I already, again, probably went back for shielding taunt because I had Hampering Sweeps. Intercept energy. You intercept strike also triggers for energy damage. Acid, cold, fire, electricity, or sonic. That's very nice if a lot of energy damage effects are coming up. I think physical are more common. I would definitely, if I didn't have something else to take, want to take that because I'm always paranoid that my ability is not going to work. But there are a lot of other tempting things. There's so many good feats in this class. Intercept foe, reaction. An ally is the target of a melee strike, and you could reach that ally with a stride action. Stride and your movement adjacent to the triggering ally. You can then use intercept foe while burrowing, climbing, flying, or swimming. That ally gains a +2 circumstance bonus to their AC against the melee strike. Okay, so that's interesting. If I'm already next to them, I obviously would usually prefer to use my ability that just lets me take the damage and be heavily resistant to it. But this would be helpful to move towards allies, especially if I have a way to get multiple reactions. I could then, on the next strike, take the hit for my ally if I'm not next to the correct ally at the time. This seems like it's one that would become a lot stronger once I have a second reaction. It's already pretty good that it gives them a +2 and moves me next to them. Shielded attrition, 1 action. Raise your shield, stride up to half your speed. Your movement triggers enemies' reactions as normal, but whenever an enemy chooses to take it or not, if they were able to react to your movement, they can't react to your ally's movement until the start of your next turn. So that's great. I often, when I'm a tanky character, will just move to trigger the enemy's reaction so my allies don't have to worry about it. But this allows you to not only do that, but also if your GM is the kind that's like, well, I'm not going to take it because I know I might get one against your allies, then you can be like, well, then you don't get one at all. Plus, it's not extra actions, and it's not a flourish. So unless you had shield and taunt, which maybe you do, you can just do this every time you raise your shield. You can stride up to half your speed. Even if it didn't do the thing where it wastes your enemy's reactions, getting a free stride up to half your speed every time you raise your shield is good. This is amazing. It competes with other things that compress your actions while raising the shield, like shielding taunt, but is a very, very good feat. All right, 6th level, disarming intercept. Free action, you intercept a melee strike made with a weapon and are adjacent to the creature that made that strike. You immediately attempt to disarm. You don't need a hand free. You gain an item bonus to athletic check equal to your armor's potency and ruin value. Nice. I'll always take a free action. That's like the shield block free action shove that I was talking about for fighter. Obviously, there are other possible feats I could take, but remember, if my disarm succeeds, even if it doesn't critically succeed, they're going to take a penalty on their attack rolls on follow-up attacks, and that will help protect our ally on additional attacks as well. Energetic specialization. Choose acid, cold, fire, electricity, or sonic. When wearing medium or heavy armor, gain resistance to that type of damage equal to 1 plus the potency rune value or 2 plus the potency rune value for heavy armor. That's interesting. It would be even funnier if it said it was also part of your armor specialization, so it doubled when you gain that class feature that doubles them. But it's already kind of interesting for a 6th level feat. It's probably not enough to make me take it, because usually I can get that much resistance without spending a 6th level class feat to do it, even if it did double on that. You might want to potentially give more types of resistances than one for a 6th level class feat on that. I'm not sure. Let's keep moving onward as we get to mobile protection. Bodyguard is the requirement. The one where you pick one person and that they get resistance against the follow-up attacks. Your intercept strike triggers when you're charged up to 10 feet away and takes damage. You can stride up to 10 feet before you take the damage. Interesting. So let's end it. Adjacent to your charge, closer or the same distance to the source of the attack than your charge, within range or reach of the triggering attack. So the fact that you can stride up to 10 feet, but when you're charged within 10 feet, leads me to believe one of two things. One, it's meant to also position yourself around the charge, or two, it might be meant when your charge is 15 feet away, because 10 feet away means there's one space in between you. So you would only normally need 5 feet to move towards them. But I guess, no, it's going to be 10 so you can kind of go around your charge toward the enemy if you're on the wrong side of them. So this gives you a little bit more flexibility about where you can be standing, but it's even better if you were already in the correct space to kind of go around and flank your enemy. So I like it because it's just something you can do automatically with your intercept strike, and I love intercept strike. So reactive strike, also great to have a different use of my reactions. I have so many reactions, I'm not so sure. This is the one class, because I'm not even an expert in attacks at this point, where I maybe would try to focus on my defensive ones. I still might take reactive strike, though. It's so tempting. Reflexive shield is going to, when I raise our shield, get a circumstance bonus to reflex saves from the shield. Stomp ground, 2 actions. Every creature in a 5-foot emanation is off guard on a successful reflex save, knocked prone on a failed reflex save, knocked prone with bludgeoning damage on a critical failure. Okay, so it's a 2-action, 5-foot emanation of prone. Prone on a regular failure is pretty good. It is a very small emanation that you can have. Being larger or bigger will definitely get you more squares on this. So you can use that to your own advantage. Especially if it doesn't use your attack roll. So the fact that your attack roll is weaker at this level doesn't really matter. 8th level group taunt. You can taunt up to 3 targets. That's going to be crucial for taunt builds where against large groups of enemies, because you were already only able to taunt 1. You can also strategically taunt some, but not all, if you don't want all the enemies to be good at hitting you. So I think that's very useful quality of life improvement. Mighty Bulwark gives you a +4 Bulwark and applies to all reflex saves, not just damaging reflex saves. So that's definitely good. It's from the Bastion, or not Bastion, the armor one. Bastion, I think, was the shield one. The Sentinel class. Sentinel archetype from Advanced Player's Guide, so it might be in Player Core 2 as well. Quick intercept. At the start of each of your turns, you gain an additional reaction you can use only to intercept strike. There we go. I was waiting for it. That makes me more likely to also want to have reactive strike if I can get quick intercept as well. So I can use both. Of course, I can intercept twice if I don't reactive strike, which is hilarious too. Repositioning block, free action, shield block. As you absorb a blow from an enemy, you can use their attack's momentum against them, attempt to reposition the creature whose attack you use shield block against. So that's pretty cool that I can reposition them. I probably might rather shove them because of the unkind shove feat, which doesn't work with reposition. But I mean, I like moving creatures around for free. I was already going to intercept things. So, or I guess it was with shield block. I was probably going to intercept, but now if I had quick intercept I could use shield block more often. I am going to not be able to use shield block as often now unless I'm the main target. So it works better for taunt builds. It's still a good extra bonus. I always take an extra bonus free action. Shield from arrows, reaction. An adjacent ally is the target of a physical range strike. You can see the attacker. You're not off guard and you've raised your shield. Get a +4 circumstance bonus. If it misses, you deflected it with your shield. So that is it's kind of like a deflect arrows situation, but it can do it for your adjacent allies instead of for yourself. It's a huge bonus. It's only against physical range strikes, so it's limited, and you had to spend a limited resource of your feats on it. It's like those other ones where if your GM uses a lot of ranged enemies or you retrain because you know you're fighting against archers, it's like ridiculously good, and otherwise it's situational, and you might want to go for something else. 10th level, get behind me. When you use intercept strike to protect an ally, you can move them up to 10 feet within your reach if they are willing. You can't move them into or through obstacles, and you must move them farther from the source of the attack. If you have intercept foe, you can move your ally in the same way if you end your movement adjacent to your ally. Okay, so it makes sense. You can't use intercept strike normally unless you are already adjacent. So it's not like you could move them to retroactively be next to you. But this is saying you could move up to them, then move them back behind you. So that's really cool. I like it a lot. This is going to be the one to beat, but maybe these others will beat it. Shield salvation. If a shield will be destroyed due to damage taken during your shield block, it remains at 1 hit point. Its construction is weakened and you can't use this again. Yeah, that's one Bastion has. It's good. I really like Get Behind Me for positioning, though. Positioning is so cool. Shield salvation is good, too. Sure-footed. You don't take a penalty to AC from the clumsy condition if you're wearing medium or heavy armor that isn't broken. Your clumsy condition still applies to other dex-based checks and DCs. That's pretty good if the enemy uses clumsy a lot. Not that many enemies use it a whole lot, but so I probably would still take Get Behind Me, but it's definitely a powerful benefit. 2 actions once per day. Your current hit points are half your maximum or left. Tough cookie. If you've taken a lot of punishment, you're not easy to bring down. Gain a number of temporary hit points equal to half your maximum hit points that last for 1 minute. That is a lot of hit points that you can do. It's obviously once per day for a reason. That is a super cool once per day ability. I love techie positioning. I might still Get Behind Me, but Tough Cookie is going to be very epic, kind of a very big move for people who are good at using their once per days and don't hoard them like me. It's good. It's a lot of hit points. 12th level, armored counterattack, free action. You need intercept strike. You intercept a melee strike and are adjacent to the creature that made the strike once per minute. Make your own strike against them. If it hits, they're off guard against the next strike made against them. Okay, that's very, very good. Obviously, it's once per minute, so you can't just be like, well, who needs attack of or who needs reactive strike? I'll just do this every time. But when it works, it works. Paragon Guard is a stance to always have your shield raised. That is extremely good for shield users as well. It would let you train out of those ones that raise your shield and do other things. Armored counterattack is really, really nifty, though. Right where you want them requires Master in Athletics to reposition or shove 10 or 15 on a critical success. That could be very good for the reposition or shove builds. I probably would usually take Paragon's Guard or Armored Counterattack, but moving your allies, just like I talked about the movement on the other abilities, is moving your enemies is powerful too. 14th level, 3 actions, wearing a shield. Raise a shield until the beginning of your next turn or until you no longer have your shield raised. Each ally that ends their turn adjacent to you gains the benefits of your raised shield. You may shield block a hit targeting any adjacent ally. If you're wielding a tower shield, any adjacent ally can take cover behind it to gain the increased bonus to AC. That's really cool. I might almost say if it was 2 actions that didn't raise the shield for you, that would be a good combo with Paragon's Guard, because if you don't need, essentially what I'm saying is if you don't need the raise the shield from blanket defense, then you could be able to do it in 2 actions, and it would still cost 3 if you needed to raise the shield separately, if you see what I'm saying. I think that might be a good quality of life improvement for this feat, because right now it doesn't synergize well with things that let you raise your shield all the time, like Paragon's Guard. And you would think that the major shield person would want both. 2 action, Bloody Denial, Flourish. If you hit with your strike, the creature must attempt a Fortitude save against your class DC. If it was a critical hit, the result is 1 degree of success worse. Success, no reactions against an ally you designate. Failure, no reactions at all, both until the end of their next turn. Or wait, till the beginning of their next turn. Okay, so you use it. Use it in protecting the beginning of your next turn. And in critical failure, they're also stunned 1. So they lose their next one action on their next turn. So that's pretty cool. It is 2 actions, and it's probably not as powerful as that ridiculous fighter archery feat that's 2 actions that, like, I think slows one on a hit. But it definitely is good for getting rid of reactions. And against some creatures like the Grim Reaper, it certainly is more powerful than that slowed one fighter thing that I talked about, where their reaction are just terrifying. Improved intercept foe. When you intercept a foe, gain a plus 10-foot circumstance bonus to your speed for the reaction. At the start of each of your turns, you gain an additional reaction that you can use only to intercept a foe. Okay, so that makes intercept foe much tastier because you're getting to do it for free, and then against further follow-up attacks, you can then use... I'm forgetting. What is the intercept? Is not the one where you intercept. It's the one where you give the AC bonus. I know that. But what's the name of the one where you... Oh, okay. I see. Intercept foe is the one where you run in front of them and give a +2 to AC. But the one where you intercept the attack onto yourself is instead intercept strike. Okay. I'm going to suggest that they not be called that. One of them is called something that isn't intercept, because intercept foe and intercept strike are too similar for me here. I got a little confused and turned around. I knew that this was talking about the one where you moved but then I forgot intercept strike's name because I was like, wasn't it something really similar to this? So you get intercept foe, then intercept strike against future attacks to protect that same ally. Very cool. 16th level Clang. Once per turn, not once per round. When an enemy critically misses the strike or spell attack roll against your AC, you strike them or stride up to your speed towards them. And if you end your movement adjacent to your enemy, they are off guard until the end of your next turn. Whoa! Swashbuckler has had the ability to do this as a reaction since first level, but free action? That is great. Once per turn, that means every enemy, you can do it separately. So, like, they best not keep making strikes against you with their higher multiple tag penalty, because they're going to take a bunch of extra attacks. Clang is really, really, really good, but I would want to use it without taunt so that I can get more attacks against me, but then they might not attack me. It's like it is balanced between figuring out which of those two things to do. Improved reflexive shield, which other classes also have now when we shield block. With a reflex save, adjacent allies get it as well. Never! Level 16. Each time you would strike an ally due to being confused or controlled, attempt another saving throw against the effect that caused you to be confused or controlled. With a +4, failing or critically failing doesn't increase the effect's duration. If you would end the condition, you don't make the strike. Take your normal actions as you would while being controlled or confused. So that's a cool way to make sure you don't kill your allies. I like it as a contingency, but come on, Clang is just so ridiculous. I wouldn't really take it for a 16th level feat because Clang is really, really good. It's a free action. There's no reason not to have this. Something's eventually going to critically miss you, even if it doesn't happen very often. All right, 18th level, perfect protection. Wearing medium or heavy armor. Each time you're critically hit, roll DC to 14 flat check. On a success, it's a normal hit. With fortification and a greater fortification, it's an even easier flat check. So this is really cool. Now, it does mean that my ability to reduce the damage of critical hits, if I took that one, is less powerful when some of the critical hits are going away. But look, no one likes being crit. So I think no one's going to complain about even less damage from critical hits. And the other feat is you can shield with arrows against ranged spell attacks as well to protect your allies against those. Again, these are very good when they come up. They don't come up. There aren't that many ranged spell attacks. I probably wouldn't take that. I would probably take perfect protection or go back for a level 16 feat because I took Clang and I wanted one of the other 16 feats. All right, 20th level, Boundless Reprisals. Every enemy's turn gives us a reaction for a Guardian feat or class feature. Okay, that is outstanding. I will definitely take this. What's the other one? When you intercept, strike, or shield block, you're quickened on your next turn to move closer to the enemy whose attack triggered the reaction. I assume it means stride or also use the following movement types if you have them, not like this is a blanket action that can be combined into any activity that will remotely allow you to move closer to the enemy or strike the enemy. Okay, it's a pretty standard feat 20 to get an additional quickened. It's a little harder to use because you have to use your intercept, strike, or shield block than the others. And Anyway, I'm always going to take Boundless Reprisals because this class has absurdly good reactions. I definitely want to use them as many times as humanly possible. And with Boundless Reprisals, I can. With Boundless Reprisals and the 8th level feat, I probably will take roughly all of the hits that are coming into my entire party, as long as I'm close enough to them, like within a 5-foot gap. And I will reduce those by reduction amount until I decide I'm not taking the hits because I'm taking too much damage. Let's spread it around a little. But that is really good. Okay, so this class is very feat dependent. I think we've seen that here. Because of the fact that like spellcasters even are going to be close to as good at fighting without their spells as this class at certain levels of the game. Even a non-war priest is going to have the same proficiency as this class at levels 1 through 6. And then at levels, what level does, I think it's level 13, or no, is it level 11? I think it may be level 11. I better go check before I just go quoting out proficiency numbers willy-nilly for everything. I think level 11 is when, yes. So basically, the only times that this class, until very late game, is above a basic spellcaster in attack proficiency is going to be levels 7, 8, 9, and 10. And then after that, you will be above a basic spellcaster at 17 through 20. You also don't have specialization, which most martial classes do have until level 9. And you won't get greater specialization also until level 17. So for levels 7 and 8, you do have a higher accuracy, but you don't have higher damage than they do. So in exchange, some of the combos of things you can do here in the defensive side are really, really something. And you get the armor buff at level 5, and you do need it as soon as possible if you want to keep taunting, probably, because you're giving the enemies a bonus against you. Some of these combos, some of these feats are super cool. And if anything, hampering sweeps, as Steven also agreed, is kind of ridiculous because there's no defense against it and they just don't get to move away from you, period. So this is a very techy and interesting class. I think a lot of its benefits are going to be harder to notice, especially if your group would be good at killing the enemies anyway or isn't running into trouble. It'll be even stronger in a stress test because of its defensive abilities, and you're going to have to be careful about which feats you take. If you don't have like a free archetype, you might not want to go into an archetype because some of these feats are very, very good and enable your class in a very particular way. And without them, without the right feats, you may feel like that a champion would be doing your job well. Whereas with these feats, you can't argue that a champion can just do the same job as this class because some of these feats let you pile up like different reactions and you're taking the hits instead of your ally. You've got resistances everywhere, whereas the champions have trouble giving themselves resistances, and just a whole lot of really fun stuff. So one thing that suggests to me is that something like hampering sweeps that maybe I agree with you, Steven, that they may want to put a defense on it or change the difficulty rate or something like that. But if they keep it, maybe it should be a class feature to prevent multi-classing and to make it so it's not like a feat that everybody feels they need to take because it's so powerful. Because often when you have something that seems like it's so mandatory, it's like, oh, I love shielding taunt, but I have to take hampering sweeps first, then it could be a feature.
I don't know. Maybe they made it level 2 feat so people can't multi-class easily, but it's too powerful.
No, but you can get it with multi-class easily because you can get it with... doesn't the basic multi-class dedication give you like a first or second level feat? It's been a moment since I looked at it. I'm now blanking. Not like the first dedication, but the one that's called basic something, like basic arcana for wizards. Yeah, you get a first or second level feat.
Oh, it's
at fourth level.
No, forget that.
If you made it a fourth level feat, it would require you to take 2 feats before you could get it, and you could get it at most at level 6, and it would cost 3 total feats.
I mean,
but if it's first or second, you can take it very easily.
Let's put it this way: the only time I'm playing 2 campaigns I'm up to 16th level, so I've seen it so far I've seen everything up to 16th level in action. And you only really see these automatic things at the highest levels. And even then, there's conditions like, oh, they have to be 10 levels below you, or, it's like, it has, what's that trait? The trait where you can't do it if they're 2.5. Incapacitation trait, right? Sorry. I'm just blanking. The incapacitation trait. So there's always these rules, or nothing is just like super automatic. And if it is super automatic, it's like, oh, you're level 16 and they're level 2. And even then, it's like, there's sometimes rules against it. So I'm like,
that's right.
This is ridiculous. I mean, so what is it? If I'm level 2 and I step next to a level 20 dragon, and I mean, like,
yeah, they're gonna have to eat you before they can move away.
I'm like, you can't get away.
I mean, they can easily eat you, or I guess they can breathe fire through you. But,
I know, but it's so silly.
They literally can't move away with that. It's
one action,
no attack roll. It's one action.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Now, Fopo in chat said that free actions without a trigger have to be during your turn. That is absolutely correct.
Mm-hmm.
I do not think any of these free actions in this class don't have a trigger. But did I say that you could use free actions without a trigger any other time? If I did, that was wrong and bad past me, because you absolutely cannot. But all the free actions I've seen in here have a trigger.
Yeah, I mean, almost,
and can be used during any turn.
In my standard design philosophy is that you either need to have a trigger or limits, or, it's like, I'm very much against automatic, like anything that's automatic, because once you go down that path, it's there's a lot of shenanigans that can be done with automatic. So, and at level 2. Yeah, I mean, look, it's a play test. I'm just,
the playtest says there might be some things that push the envelope or that are a little extreme. And look, I think this playtest was really well centered. Like, it's hard to center a playtest. Honestly, the last playtest had far more things that looked like they were like, I don't know.
Well,
like, if you remember, the Animist could like triple use one action spells and create some kind of supernova sometimes.
Well, let me ask you, as someone who's done the playtest. This is obviously something that's so freaking good for players. Are they going to be like, oh, don't change it, I love this, and then it becomes,
that is an issue.
Yeah.
I recommend when doing playtests, for people who create playtests, to try to err on the lower end of sides, so that the things that aren't quite strong enough you can buff up, because if something is too powerful, it is hard to get the feedback that it's too powerful, because many people just won't notice that. And even if you get that feedback and correctly adjust it, some people will have liked it anyway because they like being that powerful. So I generally recommend keeping things mostly in a position where it's a little, you shoot like average, and since you might miss in like a range around it, you shoot a little bit down, and then you move up in the final so people can get excited about the final instead of being like, oh, look at all the nerfs in the final. However, I feel like this playtest accomplished that, and because we pointed out one or two things maybe in Commander, one thing in this class that maybe stood out as proud nails. That's like, they did probably shift the envelope down or like to a reasonable amount. There's one that was still kind of wiggling at the top, right? I don't think there's anything in Commander that, without much heavier playtest than just reading it, because maybe there is something that when I actually playtest, I was like, ooh, that's actually a combo that's stronger than I thought. I don't see anything else in Commander that I would say just from reading it is probably likely to want to have an adjustment right away. I need to do much more extensive playtests. And in some playtests, you can see way more things than that need adjustments. I'm not just talking about Pathfinder playtests. There's playtests all around for different role-playing games. I think this was done very well in terms of the balance that they kept. But I do agree with you, Stephen. But it's almost impossible to have nothing that was a little high that might have to go down a little bit. You can, but it takes a lot of work to get to that point, and it may require you to have too many that are too low.
I actually think this is broken at any level, but that's me. I mean, like, so if this was the level 9 feet or 8, sorry, 8 or 10 feet, would you think it's broken?
I don't really like it because there's no response against it. I'd rather have a response against it, or create some kind of interaction with them.
Okay.
Something
that's
like there you make an attack roll that doesn't deal damage but makes them be stuck, or they get a save, or heck, if they move away from you, you get a free attack as a free action. It's not even a reaction. Yeah. Something like that, where it's like they can do it, but they're going to pay for it. I'd rather, or or you can stop them, but they have a chance to resist it, because otherwise, it feels like it allows you to control the battlefield a little bit too much just without doing anything else. So, like, for example, let's say you're facing an enemy that has like a whirlwind attack as its main thing, where it wants to move into your group of people, like everybody in melee. So you could make this thing be stuck so it's only next to you, and that it can't hit anybody else in its whirlwind attack. That's just one example of that. So it's very strong. If it was a feature and not a feat, at least you would be like, this is like one of the most iconic things of the class. It can't be poached with multi-class, and that's to making up for some of the other things in the class. I could see it, but as a second level feat, it's hard to say that it works really great, because even if you could claim that it's needed for the Guardian for balance, it's a feat tax at that point, and B, other classes can just grab it themselves. Yeah, I think there's other ways to go about it. Tangling Forest Stance that Quads Major pointed out is a very good example of one. So Tangling Forest Stance, for those who don't remember it, is a monk stance. It's a level 8 stance that whenever anything tries to move away from you while you're in the stance, they need to make I think it's like their choice of athletics, acrobatics, or reflex save, or they're stuck, and they lose that move action. So that was a fun one. Logan wrote it during the playtest as a new higher level monk stance, and I took it immediately on my playtest fighter monk. We did the demon playtest, that is the one that's the stress test where you're supposed to die. And man, it was really fun, because there was a lich eventually in that playtest, and I had moved up to the lich, and Logan's like, okay, well, I'm going to cast a spell on you, but first I move away. I'm like, all right, make your athletics, acrobatics, or reflex against my Tangled Forest stance. And he failed. And he was stuck. So he's like, okay, I'll cast the spell. And I crit my attack of opportunity, and I disrupted it. He was like, who wrote that Tangled Forest stance? I was like, you wrote it, Logan. He was like, oh man.
So is this commander just a reflavored
the interesting thing about that is that the Tangled Forest stance is much weaker, other than the action economy of not needing to do it every turn, because it gives them a chance to escape. But it does give an example of how this could go, right? It's like every time you try to move, once it's up, make a athletics, acrobatics, or reflex. If you fail, the action is disrupted, and then they can keep trying until they eventually get away if they need to. That's another way to handle it. There's a lot of way to do it.
By the way, did you hear what I asked?
Quads Major said difficult terrain was kind of weak, but greater difficult terrain would be good. Let me be clear, Quads Major. If it was difficult terrain, I would say it should be up all the time and not cost an action. So what are you thinking, Steven?
I was saying, does commander seem... Well, I was thinking samurai, kind of, but someone said it's kind of like a cavalier and samurai, but way better.
Yeah, I mean, like, the commander varies cavalierish. And since the samurai, it's just like, it's a type of cavalier, right? I mean, obviously not, because cavalier is also its own term that comes from chevalier and horse. But like samurai, cavalier, horse-mounted people come from a lot of different cultures, and we wouldn't want the archetype to be not all of them, right? And similarly, I think the commanders should be able to be all of those classes as well, or I'm not class, all those occupations, all those real-world sort of types of people.
Samurai.
But let's not get too deep in the weeds over this conversation.
No, I'm not. I always thought. I remember
because there was a long conversation about
I was just more curious
that could bleed into the video.
I'm always curious of classes that came and went, and like when I did the playtest, not playtest, I did Gen Con demos of the ninja, and people were like, oh my god, this class is so good. Why would I ever play a thief ever again? Because it felt like a thief plus. And
yeah, they were kind of just a more powerful class archetype.
oh, they
for
were.
a rogue.
It was ridiculous how good they were. And then
they kind of had everything the rogue did, more or less,
yeah,
but more.
yeah, it was so good. And then I was like the samurai, and then I never saw it again. Like it was the only time I ever saw it being played. And then there's a couple classes like I just never saw ever. Like when I did Pathfinder Society, and that was one of them. It was just like, I would say I saw almost every single class at least once, but I never saw that one ever again. So, just curious.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
so, Loremonger says, brag. I was in one of the 2% of groups to survive the full Whirlwind scenario in the playtest. Druid and Monk Cheese and 2 failed management saves. Oh, yeah. Good work, Loremonger. Our group ran out of time, and we just didn't keep going, but we hadn't lost yet. And then when Jason did it on the stream, he skipped some, but their group actually did beat the final encounter, which is really funny. After that, because Linda kept using Terrifying Retreat and it didn't have a level limit on it before, it was very funny because I had been looking at Terrifying Retreat and was like, maybe we should have a level limit on this. And everyone's like, nah. And then during that one, everything was just running away from Terrifying Retreat. And Jason's like, no, I think it was right to have a level limit. That idea was good. Let's put the level limit on it. And now you wouldn't be able to Terrifying Retreat a creature that's like 4 levels higher than you with a critical intimidate.
Out of curiosity,
Matt Rock says the thing that feels secretly weaker about the hampering sweeps is if you're forcibly moved, they can escape. Not sure if that's enough of an acting to count. I think that's not enough though, because even then they had to have the ability to forcibly move you, which many enemies don't. They have to succeed, and if it's shove, they have used up their multiple, like they are now on multiple attack penalty with their other actions. So like it's an ability that many creatures can't even attempt to do.
So what I'm doing, I'm more curious. I'm looking at the art. That the dwarf on page 5, that's like Christoph Peters. He does a huge amount of our work.
Nice.
I could tell.
So these are, by the way, not the iconics. They've made it clear none of the preview imagery is the iconic. Yeah. So that's not the iconic. Irabeth is not the iconic Guardian. And the ones that they showed on the Paizo side are not the iconic. I probably should have said that like up front for people who are looking at the art.
That's my favorite thing. I go through the art and try to figure out who the artist is.
That's always fun. I love trying to guess like the author,
that's 100%.
The author or the artist based on style.
No, I can tell like immediately because he does about 100 pieces for us a year, and he does this very interesting style where he kind of can't even describe it. He shades within like a mask, so he has kind of like a very specific style to him. I know I saw that. I was like, oh yeah, that's his. Kind of surprised. No artist credits in this.
Interesting. Well, maybe that's just because it's the playtest and they just kind of grabbed these pieces of art like quickly because they didn't have the full art for the book yet. They said that the writing got ahead of the book because they didn't want to clash the playtest with the Starfinder playtest, even though normally the playtest would have been later on. I think that's what they said.
So, where do you think these two classes will fit in the world of Pathfinder?
I think they have a great niche. Like, the Commander just looks like hecka fun class that is playing around with the action economy. You really feel like you're like a war leader and a tactician with this class, as far as I can tell from reading it. But I need to play it to see if I really feel the kind of feel that I'm expecting to feel. But I can tell already that I think based on having played the Warlord, based on seeing what these abilities do, based on using similar abilities with Marshall, I can tell that it's going to work. We'll see how much it works by checking it out. And I think the Guardian is going to fit in as like a really bothersome defensive character that you're just like, you're just always annoyed as the GM by the Guardian, or fake annoyed, when you pretend to be against the PCs, but you really just want them to succeed.
Does he have anything to defend against Swallowhole? Because I find that always takes care.
I mean, sort of. I suggested not to take it and to take Titan Wrestler instead, but there is a feat that makes you count as one size larger for Swallowhole. So if you take
at the higher levels, many monsters
take that and you play a Minotaur from Howl of the Wild or from Battlezoo Ancestries Minotaurs or any of our large ancestries as well, then I think that only a gargantuan creature would be able to eat you, which you won't be fighting for like many levels when you start the game. So
Perhaps, I guess.
you would be almost inedible until like when are the first gargantuans follow whole creatures? They're not for a while. So you'd be inedible for a while at that point if you took that feat. I still would probably rather take bodyguard because I think that's really it's cool flavor and story of having one person you're protecting. The effect is really nice. Also, reactive shield. I would rather usually take if I have a shield because I love if I run out of actions to put up my shield, I love being able to get up the shield up anyway at the last minute.
I do like that. It's like everyone has a plan until they're swallowed whole, and then that sort of takes care of everything. It's sort of like they're like, aha, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this. Swallow whole. I'm like, oh, really? That or trample. Trample's also a good one.
Trample is rough, and engulf is both in one, right? Because they trample into you, and then you get swallowed into the creature. So some of the people in chat also responded to your question about where they fit. Loremonger says both are awesome, maybe one or two things tuned down, otherwise fabulous. I agree, and maybe some of the things will be tuned up, actually. I think that they did a great job of shooting for where you want to be in the playtest. There are things that can be tuned up, there are things that can be tuned down. They're going to be fun. Even just the playtest commander is going to be fun. Even also, not only is the playtest commander going to be fun on its own, I can tell, but even if they hypothetically didn't fix anything that people found in Commander and all they did was make double the number of tactics, it would be even more fun than the playtest commander by a significant amount, because right now we're like running against the limit of how many tactics there are. But once you have even more tactics to choose from, this is going to be just amazing class. I mean, already is very cool. Booth B says, my favorite part of Commander is the other players can't just check out when it's the commander's turn. That's true. Quagmire 26 says, how would you compare Commander with the Envoy from Starfinder 2e? So I'm going to admit that I did an entire roll for combat live on the first Starfinder class field test, but I was not as tuned into the other ones that kind of came in along the way. So I don't remember exactly in detail what the things that the Envoy got. I remember seeing that they gave some like additional benefits in terms of like targeting an opponent, but I don't remember the exact specifics of the number on them. I suspect that while they would work together well, that the commander's ideal world is to have a party full of people who, I guess their ideal world at high levels, if these don't get changed, is to take one of the unlimited strike abilities and have a party full of people who want to make those unlimited strikes and or cantrips. But if they do limit it down so that you never are encouraged to try to do that, I think having a second support character would be incredibly good. If you're doing a like 2 people strike, then you're like, okay, my other support character is going to buff the strikes. Yeah, but I'm going to enable the strikes.
So the thing with some of these, one thing I try to get away from, because I've had fights break out, is I don't like it when you have characters that tell other players how to play their game. And you know, it's a very fine line between working together and one person saying, okay, you do this, I do this, and they're like, well, let me play my character, I want to do what I want to do. And I'm just wondering, I mean, it looks like the commander's okay, but it can get a little like into the realm of, okay, I'm going to do this turn, I'm going to do this tactic, I need you to use use a specific attack or do this or go here, position here, so I can use my ability. That's my only concern. But
you're right, and they do address this. It does say just because you make the order, they don't have to. They can choose not to do it if they don't want to.
I know, but still,
I feel like there's going to be a lot of pressure.
That's exactly.
You're right. There's going to be a lot of pressure to use it because it's going to be like I freaking use my ability. It costs me action, so I need you to go there. And then, but the other person's like, I get that that'll get a free attack, but I kind of don't want to be in that spot because I feel like it's unsafe.
I already have.
You may run into that if your group. Yeah, I can see what you're saying.
Yeah, no, because I mean, like in our groups, we already have fights. They're not fights, but let's just say loud discussions over, are you going to go give me flanking this turn? And they'll be like, no. And they'll be like, oh, and then it turns into like a 5-minute discussion of, well, what am I supposed to do this turn if you're not going to give me flanking? And it's like, and that's just flanking, that's what everyone could do. And I've seen that happen. And I'm just like, oof, this can open up a bit of a Pandora's box if whenever you have one character.
No, I can see that.
Yeah.
I think that they might be well served, just like they had a great sidebar to remind people about multiple resistances. They should maybe paraphrase the choosing a spotter sidebar that that Mike and I wrote for Guns and Gears sniping duo. That's talking about like, hey, when you're gonna take the sniping duo archetype, this is sort of kind of speaking to what one of the other characters is going to do. Make sure you team up with another player who's excited about the idea of role playing out, teamwork, and coordination in combat. I'm reading the sidebar now. With granting you benefits and gaining benefits from you. The mechanics of the archetype are not very demanding of your spotter's actions, but that still doesn't mean every player is interested in the narrative component. Mechanically, a good spotter is likely either another ranged attacker or a melee attacker, and depending on the type of spotter you choose, certain feats might become more or less enticing. So having a sidebar like that to be like, hey, you know what? Make sure your group is like kind of excited about
I get it.
Having you give these actions is probably a good idea, just to have the conversation in session 0.
No, I mean, Jacob Jet said, Eddie, this can happen. I've seen this in every type of game. But that's the point, is that it's one thing to have it in the game, but it's one thing to have a class that's literally called Commander. Where it's like, what do? I command you. I am in charge. It's like, ooh, yeah, I can see that rubbing people the wrong way. It's just, yeah.
I can see it, especially because everyone's gonna feel the pressure when the commander uses their actions to not make them waste the actions. But they might not want to do the thing the commander is saying to do, even though it's usually an advantage. Sometimes where you are on the map is where you want to be, even though the commander wants you to go somewhere else.
Let me ask you a different question then, because I'm playing Feast of Odin is a board game, okay? And one of the things in Feast of Odin is that you have abilities that you can take that require 1, 2, 3, or 4 of your villagers, and 3 or 4 is a lot. Like you can like blow your entire round if you miss. Like you can do an action and fail. And one of the things that game does is that it gives you either back a couple of your villagers, or it gives you a consolation prize of, okay, if you succeed, you get all the treasures. If you fail, you get back one of your villagers and like a wood and a spear. So you get back something if you fail, and so it's not like a total waste. Would that be, but is that too much thought space to say, I give an order a tactic, if no one follows it, I get something back, or if it's not used somehow. So this way, you don't feel like, as the commander, you're totally wasting your turn.
I feel like that's just something that you want to have a discussion with people about. I think that it's better to have a discussion with your group and to have a sidebar about that, rather than put in case everyone says no, here's what you get back, because it's going to need to be. You definitely don't want a situation where the thing that you get back is so good that you're like, hey guys, I'm going to tell you to do this, but I need you to not do it.
Right.
And so assuming that it is worse,
that's the thing.
Assuming that it is worse,
minor.
You're still going to feel bad that you got the worst thing, just like if you got nothing. You see what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know. I think
if it's like
something
do
is better
2
than
mega
nothing.
attacks that can potentially make the enemy be frightened, and they have to roll 2 will saves, and then it's like, if neither of your allies chooses to do this, then the enemy still has to roll a will save or be frightened. It's still going to feel bad. It could be like, come on, guys, we could have had 2 strikes and they would have had to roll 2 will saves and be frightened with a -1 penalty. I think it's not going to... Giving a fallback for that is no substitute for just making sure in advance that people were okay with doing the command before you take the command action, if you see what I mean.
Like an Omega Beam? Omega Beam.
Omega Beam, yes. If you are the type of group that can actually play a fusion from Battlezoo Ancestries fusions where you're sharing the same body, you're going to have no problem with commanders.
Oh my god, can you imagine
playing a fusion is much harder.
With fusions.
Commander with fusions.
That would be OP. That actually might
commander with fusions is extremely good because of the fact that it's
ridiculously good.
It's normally hard to move your fusion because all of them have to be able to move.
And the banner's already on all your characters.
Yes, and if the commander gives everybody the ability to move, that's one of the few situations where you can actually get extra moves on a fusion. Normally, it's balanced around the fact that it's hard to move. So actually, that's That's brilliant. A commander. It's also just hilarious. It's like you're the Hydra, and it's the one head, it's the one sibling who's just always bossy and is telling the other heads, "Come on, guys, come on, we've got to do this."
Yeah, if you used Battlezoo Ancestry fusions with a commander, oh my god, that's a little OP. But that's okay. See, because you're already doing something silly. If you're gonna do something silly, and they're not gonna balance it for that. The fusions is not meant to be. It's balanced to a point, but can only do.
I think it'll be okay because here's the thing.
Fine.
If you're using the commander's action, it does still prevent you from using certain combined actions because the commander was using their action to get everybody to do this combined thing, but so they can't contribute that action to a combined action. So it'll balance itself out. It would be hilarious and it would be great. I highly recommend Commander on a Battlezoo Ancestries, Fusion, Hydra, Cerberus, or Two-Headed Giant just to see what happens with it, because that is going to be a wild ride.
Yeah. That is pretty good. And then we have, let's see, the Guardian. Guardian just seems annoying.
I mean, to be fair, a good defensive character is meant to be very annoying to their enemies.
I know, but you know what?
Champions are also very annoying, and it's in a way that makes people love them. They're so fun. I love playing a champion. I like having one in my party as a player, and as a GM, I like having them because I like being annoyed by the champion because it makes it feel like my bad guys got to do something, but then the PC stopped it. I like being annoyed by a champion more than being annoyed by someone who's like, and you got no turn, you don't even get to do anything, just the monster's out of the fight, or everything misses because you hit and then they mitigate and heal.
Swallow hole. That's why so many monsters have natural attacks. Because it's like I grab you, it's like fine, I still attack you. I don't know. I maybe I've been playing too long. It's like it's not too bad. Defensive characters, that's like a chess match, and usually being the dungeon master or the GM is that you will have more ways out than the PC will, because maybe this specific encounter you're able to absolutely destroy the monsters and kill them, but then the next one no, it's like you're in real trouble, and you'll always have more abilities in the long run playing the monsters than the PCs, so you always eventually find their weakness. My favorite is that when we did an encounter and we had a monk that had mountain strike or mountain what's it, mountain stance, and they were in a room and they were flying and they couldn't get to the ground. Literally, it was impossible. There was no way to get to the ground. Even if you tried, you couldn't even touch it. And he's like, oh crap. And then suddenly nothing of his worked because he had to touch the ground. So all of his abilities went to crap. So he was just flailing around for the whole fight. But there's always a way to mess up your characters, and you will usually find it. But the secret is you do it once. You don't do that constantly, otherwise it's too annoying. But you gotta make them feel helpless at least once or twice per lifetime, not per fight or session. Once or a few times in their life, because they'll remember that.
You want them to feel powerful way more often.
Well,
you want a mix of things.
Well,
you want a mix of things.
Yeah, but also it helps them then decide, because I've seen this many times, is that you have them build the character, you do something where they're helpless, and then when they level up, they all of a sudden go overboard and like, okay, that's never happened to me again.
They're always fighting the last battle.
Right. They're like, I'm never letting that happen again, and I'm doing this, and I'm doing that, and I'm doing this, so there's always things to make sure that they don't get away. So what's the process now? Now that you've been behind the scenes.
So here's what's going to happen. The playtest is active. So everyone's going to be playing these. Try to get real play data in, because we can read these all we want. There's maybe a few things that are obvious even from reading them, that not being able to move away from the Guardian is going to be really annoying. But a lot of the time, some of the interactions are subtle and will require actually playing them. So try to get some play in if you can. You can then talk about it on the Paizo.com message boards or anywhere you want to. But the most important place to give your feedback is going to be the surveys that they linked on the playtest site, because those surveys will allow both qualitative and quantitative data to be easily extracted from everybody who participates in the survey. And that will allow people at Paizo to figure out what to do next. So based on survey data and also other stuff that's been seen, but like more focused on survey data, mainly because social media you can wind up getting social media where like a few people are talking all the time about the same thing, and it sounds like it's a very loud voice, but then when you do the survey, 1,000 people are on the survey, and it turns out that only like 6% of them agree with what sounded like everyone online was saying. So I highly recommend the survey. And they'll make adjustments. There's always going to be things they're going to add, because there's no point making every last feat and every last tactic in the playtest version. First of all, because you want to use the feedback to see what was missing. That's why another good thing on the surveys is talk about niches that could be filled with tactics that don't exist, because they're going to be making those. And secondly, because you want to channel the builds into fewer possible things so that you can get repeated data on characters that are more similar by giving fewer options. Because if you have like 70 tactics and you get, let's say, 500 playtesters, and then you wind up with situations where no playtester has the same combination of tactics as any other playtester did, maybe unless one of them was so powerful that everybody took it, and then you hear about that. And so it's like, okay, this person used this and this and this, and nobody else did. So we don't really know if it was just their group situation or what with those. So having a smaller number of options makes sense in a playtest. So they're going to expand out. They're going to adjust things. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if that hampering moves gets adjusted. It wouldn't surprise me if a few other things get adjusted. Some things might get buffed. It's possible that Guardian might get more things added to its chassis and be less dependent on its feats, for example. We'll see what they get, because there's a lot of really good things right now that are in those feats that are very tasty, even before they add more feats. So if they add more and they're equally tasty feats, it's just going to be very feat starved. Yeah. So that's a possible adjustment. You never know, right? Some things will usually go up, some things will go down. They try to make as few things go down as possible, because people get upset about those because they're used to them, and because your character is someone you identify with. So classes, which are ancestries that are the closest to the character, are the hardest things to errata or change, especially down.
So we're almost 3 hours in, so now is the time for your questions. And do check out, we got only 55 hours left for Battlezoo Ancestries. Dragons. We need
Secret Dragons.
Yeah, Secret Dragons.
We're almost at 200K. That's really, really good.
1,299 backers. Come on, don't you want to be number 1,300? And
Mr. Baggins could make it 1,400.
Wow, that's true.
All right.
Well, we got a day and a half remaining, and
more than that, right? We've got
it's till Wednesday
we've got
midnight.
2 days and 8 hours, I think.
For 55 hours. 55 hours. But it's going to be worth it. Trust me. You've been going through it. We just got some final.
Not only are all the dragons from the initial authors really cool so far, but we got some new authors that are on there who have been writing lore, and both of those look really good so far.
We have 2. So if you want to even support Roll for Combat, like one of the things we did is we found 2 brand new authors, and we can tell who it is. They signed contracts.
Yeah, they're on the page. So it's Val from Corkboards and Curiosities, and Hannah from Feywild Fiend. And they both had done small writing samples of, like, I think Val had done a little bit of lore in a class a third-party 5e class, and Hannah had done like a little adventure. But we're getting them to do some lore on the dragons in here.
Yeah, in a published book, and both of their work was excellent. So
So Hannah's is in an earlier book and is done, and it's excellent. Val's in a later book and is the outline, and the outline is so good. It's like, well, if anyone's seen Val's shows, they're all about like connecting things on corkboards with like the little like strings that connect different things. She came onto our show and even summarized. Steven gave like 2 hours of rambling but extremely insightful business advice, and Val had a notebook and was just like, okay, so here's the 8 takeaway points from this, and that was brilliant. And she did the exact same thing in her outline so far, and it looks really good. So I think this is gonna, that's in addition to the fact that we have the amazing authors for like 90% of the books, who are Jason Keeley for the Misfit Dragon we talked about earlier in the stream, Jessica Catalan, the Starfinder Society developer at Paizo, is doing the Fairy Dragons. Jessica Redicott, who is the cover author of Rage of the Elements, one of the cover authors, did the Leshy Dragons. Sent HHS, another cover author of Rage of Elements, did Battle Dragons. Battle Dragons probably love these 2 new classes.
I know, I was thinking that.
Battle Dragons are going to love this entire book.
Yeah, no, Battle Dragons love this book. And
I can tell, even though I don't know about the rest of this book, that Battle Dragons are going to love it. That this is where they want to be.
Yeah, no, it was funny because I was like, oh, this is all Battle Dragons, and Battle Dragons was.
Look, Steven, if you do enough books, eventually you're going to do something that's similar to something others are doing. It's like the time WotC and Paizo both put out a circus adventure close to each other.
I know. But my point is, it's fascinating to see how, well, it was called Battle Dragons, but they're not just, they're dragons of battle that using the tropes of different types of battle warlords and samurai and mercenaries and those type of tropes and turning them into a dragon family. But it's fascinating that this came out and I'm like, wow, these two really work together perfectly. It's like you could totally have a battle dragon as either of these 2 classes, any of the dragons, and they would love it. This is superb. So.
Yeah.
And
I'm really liking this playtest. I'm super excited to see how it continues onward. And as usual, Paizo is really nailing it with some really great content. So thanks for joining us on this emergency Roll for Combat live for the playtest. And thanks for bearing with me as we barreled through, giving insight and analysis, reading it together. And I hope that this was a form factor that helped you feel like you were able to master the classes more easily than just kind of just reading it through on your own. I enjoy doing these. If you enjoy listening to them, let us know in the comments. Give us some likes, other things like that. That tells us that these are popular enough for Steven to continue saying, yeah, Mark, it's totally cool. You can stop working on the classic creature stuff you're doing right now, and let's do a 3-hour stream to talk about the playtest. And the more that that you like it, the more that you tell us, the more that we can do these. And I love doing them, so please do.
All right. Well, with that, do check out Battlezoo Secret Dragons. Looks like we have no more questions, but
yeah. So until next time, if you want to battle the zoo, you have to roll for combat.